India's market news headquarters. Cutting-edge analysis. Influential insights. Market-moving intelligence. Broadcasting live from the CNBC-TV18 Motilal Oswal studios in Mumbai.
There have been many moments which make one feel a sense of great satisfaction. There have been a few times when it's almost despair. I would like to be remembered as a person who was able to make a change, even if it were not financially the most successful. I'd like to be remembered as the person who made a difference. Not anything more, not anything less.
You're with us here on Bazaar Morning Call, and it's a somber day, it's a sad day, I think, not just for the business community, but I think for all of India, because one of India's foremost sons, Ratan Tata, is no longer with us. And I think, you just have to see the tributes which are pouring in to see the kind of sort of man he was, how he was remembered, and of course how he will be remembered. So Mr. Ratan Tata passed away late last night. And of course, this is we're going to get you lots of reactions, people who knew him through the course of the day. We, I think, have Mr. Deepak Parik now joining us. He's former chairman of HDFC. Straight off the bat, Mr. Parik, great to have you with us here. Thank you for joining us, sir. It's a somber day, as I said. It's a sad day. How would you remember Mr. Tata?
Well, I would say that Ratan Tata was an astounding leader, an astounding empire, a man many emulated, and a personality larger than life itself. And unfortunately, he's passed on. We Indians will always be indebted to his action, his spirit of enterprise, and the strength of his vision for India's growth. Mr. Tata's pursuit of philanthropy is legendary, both within India and outside India. Many a scholar has benefited from his largesse. Many have been healed by the umbrella of hope he has so generously provided. His legacy will endure for many generations. His example will be quoted in many a tome, and his courage will be honored for time immemorial. I would only say that may he rest in eternal peace as India bows to this giant of a man. My sincere condolences to his family and his colleagues in the Tata fold.
That's very well spoken, Mr. Parik. If you can tell us a little more, any personal encounters with Mr. Tata which you would want to share with everyone, from which you drew lessons, inspiration, encouragement?
Well, I had a close relationship with him because the previous government set up an investment commission of 3 members with Mr. Tata as a chairman, and I was one of the members. And we worked for 2.5, 3 years. Every Monday we used to meet in Mr. Tata's office, and we visited number of state capitals to meet the chief ministers, and this is all met foreign companies who were trying to set up industry in India, encourage them, help them to get the right approvals quickly. And he was so enthusiastic about it when the previous government asked him to chair this commission, investment commission. So that was my close interaction with him, and he would never be unavailable for this meeting, despite his tremendous busy schedule.
Mr. Parik, sir, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this day. I just remember what Mr. Anand Mahindra said immediately, that yes, while we are going to deeply miss his presence, Legends never go away. Legends always live on, and he was one of the tallest ones that this country has produced. Sir, what do you think made Mr. Tata sort of stand apart? We've had a lot of very prominent business leaders, people working for change. What made Mr. Ratan Tata stand, tall and far apart from the rest?
His humility, his approach to any individual. His tone would never change whether he's talking to a very rich person or a very, very poor person. His humbleness, his concern for poverty India has, and and his cool temperament. I have been with Indian Hotels for many, many years, and he was the chairman, and I don't remember a single board meeting where he's lost his temper or he's talked in a louder voice, despite mistakes being made, despite results not being good, and despite number of hurdles the company went through. He never lost his temper. He never spoke louder. It's the same tone of his voice never changed.
That's a marvelous lesson, so what you're saying, something that should be imbibed and something that's often the hallmark of great people. He also went through a great deal of tumult, and at the end of his career, what he leaves behind are at least half a dozen Tata companies which are over 1 lakh crore in market cap. It's a remarkable achievement. If you look at it from 1993 when he took over, at that time there was a lot of tumult. Can you remember any of the important things or lessons, something that corporate India can take home? The kind of combinations from Tata Consumer. He sold off Tata Soaps to Hindustan Unilever, and then, of course, Gopalakrishnan came from HUL to the Tata Sons board. Anything that corporate that you want to speak about him?
He never missed an opportunity. They have had many, many consultants of all types. But his mind was very clear which businesses we should stay. We should not be on the periphery of any business. Unless we are number 1, 2, or 3, we should not remain in the business. And he endured this thought of his, and he pursued this vision amongst his senior colleagues also. And that was one of the reasons why the smaller businesses were sold or they were amalgamated into larger units. And there have been times when the steel industry was in dire strait.
Yes.
Particularly his investment in London, in Chorus Steel. Steel business is very cyclical. But yet he was so passionate about Tata Steel. And I have visited the Tata Steel plant in Jamshedpur, and he's all over the place. You talk to any worker, they talk about Ratan and his involvement. Because as you know, he started his career in Jamshedpur.
Yeah. Indeed. And Mr. Parik, when he took over Jamshedpur unit, it was just 2 million tons. And right now it's more than 10 million tons. Also, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that human capital. That's something we don't talk about very, very often. Society over profitability, that's something that the man stood for. And that's something that we don't talk about on a day-to-day basis because of the stock market. But run us through a few of those takeaways on that parameter.
That a man could work not for his own profit, but really entirely for community.
No, he always said he had no money. He always joked he had no money. And so many times I've heard from him during these investment commission meetings that he has literally no money to invest anywhere, his own personal money. And he led a very simple life. We used to have lunches and dinners together with chief ministers. Eating was very frugal. He never sort of ate. He never drank. He was not fond of drinking. So very simple habits. You'll be amazed that a giant of a man has such simple habits and temperament. You really can't find people of this type anymore anywhere.
No, absolutely. And I think the tributes which are coming in kind of emphasize on that point. Mr. Parik, just to, if I can turn your attention to businesses once again, his imprint and his guidance will of course be felt at all Tata Group companies for years and decades to come. But to your mind, was there a business which was closer to his heart than others, which he felt more strongly about, which he took a little special extra interest in?
I think it was the steel business, motor and steel. They're large companies, and they had ups and downs, and he spend more time on that. You know, TCS was a successful company right from the beginning, and he had very competent people running TCS. So he spent more time, and his aviation and motor were his hobbies. And whenever we used to fly in his aircraft, he would always go and I'm going to be the pilot, and he would fly because he loved flying also. So, you know, steel, I would say motor and then steel were his favorite. The other issue we have to remember, the other issue is that he had made such a name about the Tata Group internationally that any company who wants to come to India were vying to partner with Tata in any sector.
Absolutely.
Their first choice would be Tata and no one else.
Absolutely. Mr. Parik, I'm glad you raised that point, sir. I just wanted to come to that. I mean, if you look at the direction, shape and form that he gave to the group over his tenure as chairman of Tata Sons, I think by the time he retired as chairman, the group's total net worth has already swollen into some $100 billion. What do you think were the key pivots? You mentioned Chorus, you mentioned Tetley. Was it giving not just the Tata Group, but giving India Inc. this global ambition? Would you say that remains one of the key legacies and the key pivot for the group and for corporate India?
No, absolutely, because, you know, he bought these iconic brands from overseas. Like Tetley brand was a consumer brand. He bought that from overseas. And so he always wanted to create global companies in India. He always wanted to create multinationals of Indian origin.
That's true.
And he was passionate about that, and he worked towards that.
Okay. Just a final word, sir. Have you noticed anything about his ability to spot human talent, human capital?
Yes, yes.
That he befriended you, I guess.
No, yes, he has. He has. If you see the leaders over time, and I've seen over 50 years, different leaders of different Tata Group companies, they all had phenomenal leadership qualities. Some may not have agreed with him or his view, or there may have been a misunderstanding, but besides, two people are never the same. So, but he had the eye to select the right people.
Mr. Parik, you've seen the man from close quarters, closer than most can ever would have ever gotten to. If you were to say, convey a message from Mr. Ratan Tata's legacy to other business leaders, to aspiring entrepreneurs, in terms of how one should look at personal conduct, how one should look at paving the path to success, what would those one or two lessons be that you'd like to hand over, so to speak, from Mr. Ratan Tata to the next gen?
Corporate governance and humility cannot be sacrificed for anything. In any business you do, in your personal life or your professional life, you must have the humility, traits of humility, and you must have governance standards, integrity. You build your reputation by integrity and transparency, and that was Ratan Tata famous for.
Well spoken, sir. I would think even Deepak Parik is known only for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Parik, for speaking to us and for telling us things that the world needs to know about Mr. Ratan Tata. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I think, humility, not working for profit, wanting to have India multinationals pick the best from the world and make them Indian brands. I think great lessons from Mr. Parik.
So important, isn't it? I mean, the world and I think Indian business is in a very different transformed landscape. And we talk about VCs throwing money, new age businesses, new entrepreneurs, overnight success stories, multi-billion-dollar valuations. It's so important to keep the basics in mind.
And besides the corporate business, his love for animals. I recall in 2020, he wrote a letter to the Kerala Chief Minister at that point of time when a pregnant elephant died. Also, he had two dogs, which he was very, very passionate about. I think started in
the Bombay House, which is the headquarters of Tata. So my kids used to go to the school next door, right behind Bombay House. And so I used to go pick up my son all the time. And they created a center, at Bombay House for strays.
That's what I was getting to.
I've met Mr. Tata there at Bombay House, outside, playing with animals, just there. And so, yeah, I mean, some of the pictures are up on
Tango
your
and
screen
Tito.
as well.
But my memory is having attended a Tata Steel press, the AGM.
Yeah.
And he was obviously chairman over there. At the end of it, as a reporter, it was Dow Jones Newswire. So at that time, we used to go with the tape recorder and go to him. He kept the tape recorder aside, and I said, "I'm from Dow Jones Newswire." Oh, he's, shook hands. That's the only memory, but it was,
the
of course,
Chorus press conference. I remember what a moment that was. I mean, you can go on into the sort of the debate around what ultimately happened with Chorus and what kind of a decision it was, and Nigel is best placed to do that. But I remember the moment when that acquisition was announced. It was the biggest thing I think the country has
some
seen.
of those acquisitions, it stamped India's ascendancy over Britain. That was the point that he wanted to make.
All right, well, let's welcome in our next set of people who are joining us to pay tribute. K.K. Mistry is former Vice Chairman and CEO at HDFC Limited. Nilesh Shah is, of course, with Kotak Mahindra Asset Management Company. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us. It's a somber day. We're remembering a great man, Mr. Ratan Tata. Mr. Mistry, if I can start by asking you, I mean, how do you remember Mr. Tata? And, just some personal anecdotes and your interactions with him, what you took away.
I think let me first say that it is impossible for me or anybody else to describe the enormous legacy that Mr. Ratan Tata leaves behind. He was a legend like nobody else. He had incredible vision. He was truly an outstanding and extraordinary human being who lived an extremely, incredibly simple life despite his tremendous achievements. He has so much of conviction in what he did. And under his leadership, everyone has talked about it, Tata Group grew from strength to strength. He had the vision, the courage to make some extraordinary, some very, very successful acquisitions for the Tata Group, whether it was in Tata Motors through JLR, Tata Steel through Chorus, or Tata Consumers through Tetley. For the first time in those days, he took India on the global stage because nobody in those days could imagine an Indian company going and acquiring a international, a global giant from overseas. I remember many years ago, I was driving from Budapest to Prague, must have been 10 years ago or 9 years ago or something. And along the way, I saw at least two places where I saw boards of Tata Group along the way. So he really took India on the global stage. And I think what really separated him from any other legend was his humility, his simplicity, the kind of life he lived. He lived a very simple life. Despite creating so much wealth for the community and the country, he always remained a very simple man, a very approachable man, very, very philanthropic, always wanting to help people. He helped so many startups, and he encouraged the youth of the country.
So you know him personally? Any personal anecdotes?
I don't know him that well personally. I met him a few times, but I never worked with Tata on any assignment or any committee or anything of that sort. But I'm on the board of TCS. But by that time, Mr. Tata was not involved directly in TCS.
Was not taking a direct interest.
So speaking of that, so Mr. Mistry, morning. Tell us about that. I mean, we've spoken about the hard asset businesses, whether it's Tata Motors, Tetley, or Tata Steel. I mean, TCS itself, right? I mean, that was the Tata Group at the cutting edge of, innovation, outsourcing, services. How have you seen the transformation? And were there sort of, were there indications or anything that was imbibed from Mr. Ratan Tata as the company grew in stature and size?
I think TCS grew from strength to strength over the years, and TCS started. I remember TCS being listed. I was not on the board at that time, but TCS being listed many, many years ago. And I remember there was a roadshow in London, and we were on the same flight, coincidentally. And I was to go for a HDFC roadshow, which was a non-deal roadshow. And Mr. Tata and a couple of people from the Tata Group were going for the TCS roadshow. And again, the simplicity of the man, people walked up to him, people sought his autograph and photographs, wanted to be photographed with him. And he was so simple, always obliging people. He created TCS, he created that brand of that India could be a big IT player in the global stage. And I think that legacy just kept being built upon over the years.
Okay. Well, good to hear that, Mr. Mistry. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
and sharing your thoughts about him. We also have Nilesh Shah of Kotak Mahindra AMC joining us. Nilesh, he's created wealth for so many shareholders. Tell us how you would look at him from a shareholder angle as well.
So from a shareholder point of view, Tata matlab so touch nu sonu. You have to invest in their companies and stay invested for long term. They will take care of everything. That legacy, that culture, that confidence has been built over the generations. And there is one incident which I have always remembered. During the Second World War, Tata Steel was not in a position to pay their workers at Jamshedpur. And Tata family pledged their jewelry, raised money from Indian banks, and put money in Tata Steel to pay workers' salary. How many promoters are there who will pledge their personal wealth so that their public company can prosper and survive? That's the legacy of Tata. The name alone is sufficient for shareholder to invest.
Absolutely, Nilesh. Hi, morning. Let's talk, because we're talking businesses segment by segment, right? And obviously the Tata Group made its inroads into financial services as well, with the insurance business, with asset management, Tata Capital, etc. How would you describe the strides over there? One also wonders, because given that integrity was such high up there, such a high priority, would that in a sense maybe limit aggression, given that the financial services business is very aggressive, very portioned? That was not the personal style that Mr. Tata perhaps would have approached.
So if we look at in the financial business, there are two models. One, you grow rapidly and then falter, or second, you build brick by brick and eventually you build a tall building. I think by definition, Tatas were suited for the second model. They have built their financial business over years, brick by brick. There were some setbacks, undoubtedly, but those setbacks they have taken in their stride and moved on. Today, except banking, where they are not permitted under law, in all other sphere of financial services, Tata presence is visible.
Nilesh bhai, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your sort of memories and what you really took away from Mr. Tata. Thank you very much for joining us. So it's a somber day. We remember a great man, but and of course we will continue to do that as we get you a sort of more perspective from people who knew him, who of course interacted with him in various capacities. From what we understand, the mortal remains of Mr. Tata will, of course, are at his residence right now. They'll be moved to NCPA in South Bombay, where the body will be kept for people to be able to come and pay their last respects. So that's essentially what we're looking at through the course of the day. We'll take a quick commercial break here. The first on the program, we're going to come back and get you some sort of market-related news as well. There is a market which is trading, so that's coming up. All right, welcome back. We're just going to look at what the GIFT Nifty is doing and take a look at what the open is likely to be. About 100, 110 odd points higher. That's the implied open. If you can quickly run you through, because 9 o'clock we'll have the pre-open and then market open. Let's just quickly run you through what you need to know in terms of specific cues. Now, US equities have hit a fresh all-time high. That is last night. S&P 500 made its 44th high. All-time high, by the way, this year, that is in 2024. And it's quite something. Volatility in the US continues to come off. The CBOE VIX was down about 3%. Yields continue to move higher. We're at about 4.07%. That's about a 6 odd basis point jump. And as a result of the big jump in yields, you've got the dollar JPY, which has now risen to 149.5, which means that the JPY has fallen. We were talking about 140, we're now nearly 150. So that's essentially what has happened. I mean, it's a stronger dollar, stronger US. US exceptionalism in that sense is back with that last jobs data report which came through. And it's now, of course, showing through in various other asset classes. Equities, for example, which, as I said, have made a fresh high. There is oil prices which are steady. I mean, they've been coming off a little bit from the recent highs. No fresh headlines from West Asia. So that's something to watch. Later today, we'll get the US CPI numbers, and I think that will give us a sense of if that is meaningfully different. I mean, last couple of data points have been meaningful enough to move markets. We'll see if that is the same. But that's the next one. That is later tonight, when we get the data. Just to circle back and to tell you the levels here. So yesterday was peculiar because you had a surge, but there was a brief surge. At one point, the market was up 200 points, and then there was a complete collapse which happened, and we ended flat to actually even slightly lower. That resistance came in at the almost exactly a couple of points within distance of the 40-hourly exponential average. So that's essentially where the market sold off from. I'll look at the sort of lower levels first. The point is, as long as the day before yesterday low on the Nifty and the Bank Nifty, which is for the Nifty 24,694, remains unbroken, I mean, we can see up moves which are possible still. And that they will sort of happen. The question is whether it is durable, whether it is temporary. That we'll have to figure out as we go along. And I said this yesterday as well, that don't get too excited. Repair takes some time. Further upside levels after we cross the 40-hourly exponential average is 25,485 and 25,673. These are simple retracements of the fall from the all-time high to the recent low day before yesterday. So those are levels for the Nifty. For the Nifty Bank, upside levels are 25,000. I mean, similarly, the Nifty Bank also, by the way, sold off from the 40-hourly exponential average yesterday. I'm not repeating that. Resistance at 51,606, which is the 40-hourly average. The changed one now as of yesterday. And resistance now after that comes in at 52,330, which is the 50% retracement of the fall that we have seen. And of course, lows from day before yesterday should act as a support as well. Hopefully, we don't test that even as the market takes some time to find its feet. The implied open is up on your screen. Surabhi.
Well, absolutely. And most of the markets in Asia are actually trading positive, and that sort of gives context to the implied open 100-point move that we're seeing. There's a rebound in China. I usually start by looking at that market, these days. So China is up a little bit. The Hong Kong market's rallying about 2.7%. China is also up just under 1% or so. In Japan, there is some fresh sort of data, macro data that's come out. The inflation print there keeps accelerating. And remember, the Bank of Japan hiked and then they had to go on pause because the Fed started cutting. But therefore, inflation trends are important to track over there. The PPI number, producer prices, up 2.8% in September. Higher. The pace of growth is higher than what we saw in August, which was about 2.6%. On crude, I just want to add that, if you want to call it, it was a minor headline that kind of came in because the world is still at, waiting on the edge, so to speak, in terms of expecting some sort of Israeli retaliation. There was a phone call between President Biden and Mr. Netanyahu yesterday, after which the statement came in from the Israeli defense minister. Now, we'll see what it really amounts to. But he said that Israel will strike against Iran, and the strike will be lethal, precise, and surprising. It was enough to lend some kind of an upside move to oil prices because Brent now is again at 77. The low when the slump happened was around 75. Now we're seeing prices above 77 this morning. So let's watch for that. Of course, we have inflation numbers in focus on Wall Street today. That's going to be PPI. That's going to be the CPI number. PPI is coming out tomorrow, so watch for that. Yields continue to move higher ahead of those important prints, 4.07% on the US 10-year. Let's talk about the situation here. The market yesterday didn't look too great because we could not retain any of the bounces. And, on the large cap screen, there was selling coming through. Even though the FPI selling intensity has reduced a tad bit. Let's pull up the FPI numbers. A selling of 4,562 crores, which is large, but it's not as bad as 9,000, 8,000 crores, 10,000 crores that we had to deal with when the entire China onslaught was really on. Domestic institutions, bought to quite some extent, 3,500 crores of buying. But disappointment, yes, because large caps could not hold their momentum. The market seems to be entering a pretty cautious phase because the biggest litmus test is upon us. There's liquidity on one side, that's hard delivery in terms of earnings and numbers on the other. And the season kicks off full throttle today with TCS. And there's anticipation that the second quarter is not going to be looking as promising. So expectations have been coming down, but still analysts point that there is a risk of downgrades by the end of this season to the full year estimates, FY25 estimates, which are ranging between 13% to 15%, that they could be downgraded. Nuvama is saying that the Nifty EPS in the first half will grow just 3%. TCS starts the season today. We're looking at a constant currency growth of 1.2%. And some of the other companies that will be reporting include Tata Legacy, Anand Rathi Wealth, and GM Breweries. So, yep, it's down to the wire. The numbers have to show up.
Well, that's right. Yesterday's trading session, it gave a lot of promise. But from there, that advantage got faded away towards the end of trade. So let's take a look at the F&O action. Well, on the Nifty Futures itself, there was some unwinding of positions that we saw in yesterday's trading session. It seems there were some shots that were created on the Nifty Bank. Remember, yesterday it had its weekly expiry as well. So that could have had an element as to why we did fall drastically in the last 60 minutes or so. What about positioning? Clients? Well, they in fact, let's start with the FIs first. The FIs, they were net long just a short while back. Now, in fact, they moved to net short. And these net short positions are the highest we've seen all the way since June. The clients, well, they have turned things around. They were, in fact, earlier, they were net short, now they're net long. And their net long positions as well are the highest that we've seen all the way since June. Both of them have been on the opposite end of the spectrum, and the clients have been getting it right. But having some shorts in the system is something that the bulls actually would like. The PCR continues to remain at the lower end of the range at around 0.72 odd. So let's pull up two strikes because today we have the weekly expiry that will play out. The 25,100 call, well, that was fairly active in trade. And on the downside, we have around the 24,800 put. So putting together the options data, putting together the recent highs and lows, you're getting a broad reference point and the broad 500 to 600 point range that you're looking at. The downside as well as the upside need to decisively break both these two levels to get further direction from here on. On the Nifty Bank, yesterday we managed to get past that 100 DMA, but we couldn't hold above that mark. So this becomes a bit of a resistance zone. You wanted to get past the 100 DMA and then, in fact, the 50 DMA as well. So that's about trade setup. I expect Nifty to be in a bit of a range, but in stocks that I'm looking at, well, Tata Chemicals, that one has been seeing a good amount of buying, delivery-based buying. It moved quite well yesterday as well, and the stock has moved into the F&O band. So I'll keep an eye out on this one. It appears that it's got some momentum going for it.
All right, so we'll keep an eye out on Tata Chemicals, absolutely. What we'll do is we'll take a quick commercial break here. We're going to come back and we'll have some specific stocks that we want to get to you. So news flow, that's coming up in a bit.
Welcome back. Well, we also have several stocks to watch out for. We have Vamakshi joining in to lay out the list today. Vamakshi, tell us what are the names you're looking at?
Well, good morning, Surmi. Let me first start off with Adani Enterprises. The company has launched its QIP and has set the floor price at 3,117 odd rupees per share. And keep in mind that this is after Adani Enterprises board had back in May approved a total fundraise worth 16,600 crores. Sources suggest that the issue size of the QIP is at 4,200 crores. The indicative price is at 2,962 per share, which puts it at a discount of almost 6% to the closing price yesterday and up to 5% to the SEBI floor price. Star Health also on our radar. A massive data leak is the reason why the stock will be in focus. Expect some pressure here coming in. Hackers claim that data of over 3 crore customers of Star Health has been leaked. Hackers claim that the Star Health CISO Amarjit Khanuja sold the data, but the company has clarified, saying that the CISO has been cooperating in the investigation and they have not arrived at any finding of wrongdoing by him till date. Lastly, keep an eye out on Britannia as well. Positive development out here. 2 years after signing the JV with BEL, the Bell Group, the JV has inaugurated its cheese factory in Maharashtra. Keep in mind that the JV had made an investment of around 220 crores in the factory, and this facility will be used to produce Britannia, the laughing cow product. So positive development out there for Britannia.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Vamakshi. Well, troubles mounting for Ola Electric. The Ministry for Heavy Industry has asked to look into complaints against Ola. Parikshit joins us to fill us in with the latest on that front. Parikshit?
Well, yes, the Ministry of Heavy Industries is the nodal body for rolling out the PLI scheme for the automobile sector, for the battery PLI scheme, and also for the fast adoption and manufacture of electric vehicle scheme, which gives subsidies to EV makers. And Ola is beneficiary of all three. So the ministry clearly has taken cognizance of all the media reports and also the CCPA notice to Ola Electric with regard to over 10,000 complaints that have been received. Now, what the minister has himself intervened and said, the Minister for Heavy Industries has urged officials to seek comments and replies from ARAI. ARAI is the automotive testing body of India, which gives eligibility certificates for the FAME scheme, for the PLI schemes, to all automakers. So considering this is the testing agencies which has approved all automakers, the minister has said that ARAI must look into these complaints and come back with comments. So we could see possibly the next steps being taken once the ARAI submits a report. But this is a very important step that has been taken by the Minister for Heavy Industries.
Okay, all right, got it. Parikshit, thanks very much. Ola Electric continues to be under a lot of regulatory scrutiny, and we'll watch out for how the counter reacts. Deepan Mehta is with us, Director at Elixir Equities. Deepan, thanks for joining in. Coming to you a little late today for a very, very big and somber reason. But we also have a market to look at. So to start off with, let's look at whatever is happening with Ola. It's just the scrutiny is only intensifying. What would your advice be on the stock now?
Yes, Surbi, thank you for having me on your show and good morning. I think we've never been positive on Ola Electric since its listing. And it had a fabulous listing and a lot of fireworks and a lot of froth and speculative activity. But now I think gradually reality is sinking in. It's not an easy business. And as I said before, that it's not a platform business where you can suddenly just scale up once the subscribers come on board and fixed costs remain static. This has got a high variable cost involved over here and a lot of competitive intensity as well. And no clear roadmap as to when they will turn completely profitable. So from that point of view, I think we've always been avoiding Ola Electric. And even at these levels, I would be a bit bearish on the stock, especially disappointed with the volume numbers, which have been coming down month on month.
Okay, all right. Hi, Deepan. Good morning and good to see you. And Deepan, I wanted to ask you about the metals pack. The stocks have run up considerably. That hope of that stimulus didn't really come about, but now there is another pressure that's taking place later this week. So that's why from the lows yesterday, the metal stocks moved up. Would you look at playing this, at least in the near term, if it's got the momentum, valuations aside, will you go in for it or you want to stay away?
Good morning, Nigel. Yes, of course, metal stocks have gone up because of the China stimulus and expectations that prices would go up over there. But our view is that China is the structural changes taking place over there. And there's a lot of overcapacity when it comes to metals in China, and they're not going to rebuild China or spend extensively on housing and infrastructure projects as they did in the past, which was driving growth for metals. So I don't think that this metal rally is sustainable. And it's a good trading play. I mean, from time to time, you keep getting news flow on metals, so they go up, they go down. But from an investment perspective, even if with a 3 to 5 year type of a view, you're not getting an entry at an attractively low price to earnings multiple. I think the way we used to buy steel stocks or aluminum stocks were like more like single digit P multiples at or around book value. But that's not the situation that as of present, where a lot of metal stocks are trading at significantly higher valuation than their historical averages. So for me, it's an avoid.
Okay, got it. This whole situation on Star Health, Deepan, just if you could come in on this. We don't know how the stock will react. Obviously, the company is saying that they're working to rectify it. It's a really huge data leak, right? And all kinds of allegations are flying around. But what's your take on the stock, on the business per se? And would any dip be a buying opportunity, or would you stay away?
No, I think it's a great company. And if you want a pure play medical insurance company, then certainly Star Health fits that criteria. But I think the performance could have been better. It's not optimal, and it's not running at its full potential, I would say. And it's not that valuations are also cheap. I think growth rates could have been higher for us to be positively inclined to have a positive view on the stock. Broadly, I think it's not an industry which is very easy to kind of play. And there's a lot of competition also coming up. Recently, LIC also wants to get into this medical insurance space, and that could be a bit of an issue for Star Health. So I would just like to wait and watch, maybe at corrections, look at it more positively.
All right, Deepan, stay with us. We're going to take a quick commercial break here. We'll come back. We'll get you some specific trades as well. Mitesh and Sudarshan will be with us on the other side. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Well, you're tuned in to CNBC-TV18 Bazaar Morning Call, and we have Deepan Mehta who's with us. Deepan, I wanted your view on Tata Chemicals. The stock hasn't done much. Technically, it's moved into the F&O ban, and also it's been seeing a fair bit of delivery-based buying. Any view on the stock at current levels?
Nigel, I think the track record has been pretty disappointing, and they want to transform themselves into a chemical company which will supply to the electric vehicle and the lithium ion, that ecosystem, but that's still a long way to go over there. End of the day, it remains highly commoditized, and the movement of prices of soda ash globally impact the company. Valuations are reasonable. I think there are better choices in the Tata group than Tata Chemicals at this point of time.
Okay, all right, got that. Deepan, I also wanted to ask you, now we're getting into busy season where you see construction activity will pick up. You'll see cement consumption as well going on. And that's normally what we see. Second half of the year for these companies are better than the first half of the year. Anything on your radar?
Well, cement is definitely an avoid, Nigel, considering the way the prices are going, and also the fact that competitive intensity continues to go up, and demand certainly has not been what as the industry and a lot of analysts have been expecting. So you will see a lot of disappointments coming to the cement companies in this quarterly result. When it comes to construction, I think some of the engineering construction, the road construction companies, the civil construction companies, the tier 2 companies like PNC Infra, ITD Cementation, I think those can do pretty well. The valuations are still in that 25-30 times bracket, so not that expensive as compared to, say, an L&T. So I would say that there could be a trading rally in these companies, and usually I think September and March quarters are good for these companies. So I would focus on the tier 2, tier 3 EPC companies.
No, got that. Deepan, Divi's Laboratories, I mean, if you have a view, we saw that massive move, 7-8%. There was that initiation from Citi, although it was like a normal initiation report. I mean, nothing extraordinary about it. So I don't know how much credit we should give that. But in any case, your view?
Prashant, as I speak to people on the street, everybody's looking for good ideas in the pharma sector, because you see a lot of slowdown in various industries and sectors in the next 2-3 quarters could be transient. But pharma is one, I think, which is going from strength to strength. Last 2-3 quarters have been very impressive. And if you want to deploy large capital and have that kind of a re-weightage or in the pharma sector within a portfolio, then there are only that many few large cap stocks. And Divi's Lab has been a quality performer in the past. Last 2-3 years, there have been challenges, but now I think they seem to have got their mojo back. And valuations are expensive, but this company can certainly surprise when it comes to the earnings. So very positive on Divi's Lab. If you have a slightly longer term view, 2-3 years or so, this company can really deliver the results.
Okay, Deepan, stay with us. Let's get some technical trading ideas out of the way as well. So we have Mitesh joining us, and Shilpa Raut of Prabhudas Redder who's with us as well. Thanks very much, both of you, for being here. Mitesh, it fizzled out on how yesterday. So what to do today?
Yeah. So Prashant, I think, this still looks like a broad pullback move to me. And therefore, you will see selling at higher levels. I think that's a very clear understanding which I got from yesterday's price movement. It just confirms that, on the upside, supply will re-emerge. Now, today will be a gap up day. The GIFT Nifty is showing about 100 points kind of a gap up. So I think it will be a good start. But as I said, I think, I'll not be carried away by the good start. Rather, I'll be more worried about the fact that, in case the good start fails to sustain at higher levels. So if that happens, then I think, we'll be in the mode, identify short ideas and, build some put spreads on the index and the stocks. But selectively, pharma and banks can also be, taken on the long side. So it will be a mixed bag. But broadly, I think on the index level, I've highlighted 25, 150, 200 zone and then 25, 350, 400 zones. If we get closer to 25, 350, then I think it'll be an aggressive short. Otherwise, still then we are trading with more of stock-specific ideas.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that, Mitesh. Well, let's get in Shilpa as well. Morning, Shilpa. What's your trade on the Nifty? Yesterday, it appeared we were breaking away, but we ran into resistance at around the 25,250 mark. Your view?
Good morning, Nigel, Prashant, and Surbi, and thank you for having me on the show. Talking about indices, yes, the sell on rally concept is still hovering around, because as long as we are not closing above 25,500 on the upside, we will not see any meaningful trend reversals signals. So from here, any gap up towards 25,200 to 25,300 is also very ideal to go sell for intraday basis. So today the setup is more positive for the indices than individual stocks. However, since the setup is, the overall texture is still weak, so selling on rally towards 25,300 for Nifty is more advisable. And Bank Nifty, as long as it is holding above 51,000 mark, we can still see some respite towards 51,500 to 51,800. But a slip below 51,000, let's say 50,800 mark, the texture changes aggressively to the selling side, where levels of 49,500 can come to. So a wait and watch for Bank Nifty and sell on rally for Nifty.
Okay, all right, got that. Shilpa and Mitesh, morning to both of you. Let's, talk about individual stocks as well and the trades that one can take. Mitesh, what are you going with today?
Good morning, Survi. I have a few, IT and pharma names on the buying side. Lupin, I think, is a buy with a stop at 22.50 for targets of 23.70. Earlier, we have had calls on Glenmark and DBs, which have done extremely well. Lupin has fired another buy signal with after a few days of consolidation. OFSS is a buy with a stop below 11.300 for targets of 12.350. ITZ, as I said, if you get a mild pullback, let's say around 494, 495 today morning. Short positions can be initiated with a stop at 501 for targets of 482 to about 480, maybe lower, but that's the first target. And Exide finally had a good breakout yesterday. Disclaimer, I have some stock in my portfolio, so there's vested interest. So Exide is a buy with a stop at 509 for targets of 540.
All right, got that. And Shilpa, what about stocks for you today?
Actually, also looking on selling financials, particularly, there are many counters that are showing a lot of weakness. The first one would be M&M Financials. The stock has gone below 300 now. So from here, I believe the targets of 250 can come in as well. So a stop loss of 305 and looking for targets of 250. The other one would be a sell. Also in ITC, I believe the texture has really weakened down from here. Levels of 480 to 465 can also come in. So that is also one counter that can be looked upon for sell. For buy, I believe, stocks like MCX can be definitely looked upon. It is having a massive bull run, and the stock trading above 6,000. As long as it is trading above 6,000, I believe it has potential to do 6,500 as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you, both of you, for joining in and giving us the trading setup for the day. We have to take a quick break on that note. We'll come back on the other side, and we will continue our special coverage and our special tribute to the legendary business icon, Mr. Ratan Tata. All right, we've been talking markets, and of course the opening is 15 minutes away, but we have obviously a big event that the nation is trying to get over, which is the loss of Mr. Ratan Tata. In fact, I think Yash has been on ground today. There will be a memorial service at NCPA, I believe around 3:30 thereabouts. Yash, are you indeed at NCPA? What is the latest?
Well, Surbi, you said that there is an event which the nation is trying to, get over. But the name Ratan Tata is the name which India will remember for many, many centuries, many generations to come. For someone, it was his business astute which became an example in their lives to lead by. For someone, it was just an example of how he could touch lives of millions of underprivileged Indians through healthcare, through education, and many ways in which he could touch their lives, no matter which side you were on. But one thing which was sure, that he was a role model, that is Mr. Ratan Tata, in more ways than just one. Of course, last night we were hit by this very unfortunate news of him passing away at the Breach Candy Hospital here in Mumbai. He was battling certain health issues. At the start of the week itself, we heard about him getting admitted to the hospital, but then some positive news followed after that, where there was a communication from Mr. Ratan Tata where he said that these are basic general health related checkups, age related health issues, and he is in high spirits and there's no concern. That is where the country took a lot of relief from. But just a couple of days after that, we were hit by this unfortunate news of him not being amongst us. Today, of course, last night after the news, late, the mortal remains were brought back to his residence here in Colaba. You can see behind me, that is the residence where Mr. Ratan Tata stayed, and the mortal remains were brought back here. Of course, there are very close family members, friends who are visiting the place at this point of time. And from here, in about an hour and a half, the mortal remains will be taken to NCPA, where you could possibly imagine every corporate leader, coming and paying his last respect to Mr. Ratan Tata at NCPA, and then final procession will begin from NCPA. But at this point of time, here at his residential building, close family members, friends coming over to pay his last respects, and then from here, in about an hour and a half, is when we move towards NCPA.
Absolutely, and we understand that Mr. Noel Tata and his family and 3 children were also at the residence earlier this morning. Yash, thank you very much for that. And of course, Yash will move to NCPA, and we'll, I think it'll be sort of a stream of people lining up to pay their last respects to the great man. We have Mr. Ramesh Damani joining us, BSE member, somebody who's seen markets and corporates for a long time. We also have Mr. Gurcharan Das, author and former CEO at PNG, joining us. Madhu Khela is with us of MK Ventures, and Sunil Singhania is also with us at Abacus Asset Management. Thank you all for joining us here on this somber day, on this sad day, as we pay tribute to Mr. Tata. Mr. Damani, if I can start with you, sir, how would you remember him?
He was, I think, many things, of course. He built the Tata Empire in the modern generation after liberalization. But I think what everyone would remember him, that he was a conscious keeper for India. I think there's a very favorite line from a poem that I like, Saint Francis of Assisi. And the last line says, "It's in death that we're born to eternal life." I think the principles that he lived by all his life will be remembered by the next generation of Indian leaders, because they're so firmly etched into the corporate philosophy, history. He was a true Tata apostle, and I think it was a big loss. So we'll still try to grapple with how we remember him. But I think the first thing that comes to mind is the enormous contribution he made to India in terms of wealth creation, yes, and also in terms of the principles of how a company, how capitalism should be run with a conscience.
Well, good morning, Mr. Damani, and always good to hear your thoughts. You would have interacted with either Mr. Tata himself or some of his group CEOs as well. Any kind of interaction that you could narrate to us? One such that comes to my mind is when I reach out to most people who went to the Jamshedpur unit, they said we didn't just see the steel unit. He also told us, go and see the state-of-the-art, the world-class hospital facility that we have out there. So they had to split their time between the two. Something that you could tell us, that in terms of your interactions.
Yeah, sure. Also in Jamshedpur, I'll point them out to you. There's a statue of a diamond there, which was pledged by the Tata Group in order to meet the payroll at that time. And that's always a reminder of how Tata's put people first. Unfortunately, I never had the experience of interacting with him, interacting with many of his CEOs over time. But I'll tell you an interesting story, Nigel, that happened to me. I'd come back from doing my MBA from America in the 1990s. And at that time, I was addicted to reading the Wall Street Journal. So I finally found an Indian vendor who could supply that paper to me. And one day, casually, I asked him, I said, how many papers do you supply of the Wall Street Journal? And he said, 3. Curiosity got the better of me and asked him, who are the 3 people who were reading it? And he said, the SBI chairman, Bombay House, Ratan Tata, and yourself. So I was in good company at that time, reading the Wall Street Journal along with him. Unfortunately, in my career, I never happened to cross paths in a serious manner with him. But I read a lot about his work and the kind of businesses that he's built over time.
No, absolutely. Speaking of the Wall Street Journal, I think, there are lots of connects over there because he was a Harvard, alumnus. And I think the story goes that he did have a job offer from IBM right out of school. But obviously, that was not of interest. And he decided to come back here, back home in the 60s. And, his first brush with the group formally was with the telco where he worked on the shop floor. So that's how it was all built. The story was built ground up. Mr. Gurucharan Das is also with us. So great to have you in this conversation. You tell us your recollection, thoughts, images and impressions of the man that we are discussing today.
I think we mourn his loss today because he was, frankly, the leader of India's premier, most respected business group, which stands for integrity above all else, for philanthropy, for professionalism, and for taking an Indian company global after the reforms of 91, and as well as keeping the group together. Because, when JRD passed away, we had these satraps who were running Tata Steel, Tata Chemicals, Tata Hotels. And there was a fear that these companies might go separate ways. And it was to his credit that he kept them together. But for me personally, I knew him briefly. It's through several encounters. I was a member of one of the Tata boards. And what struck me about him was his modesty. He was a shy man and he loved his pets. I mean, once he had his dog with him. And you could tell the very human quality that he brought. But then he also was ambitious because the acquisition, particularly of Land Rover Jaguar, I think was an important step in the rising of India Incorporated. And as Mr. Damani said, he was the conscience keeper of India Incorporated. That's why we are proud of him.
Mr. Damani, if I can, just to take that point, Mr. Damani, if I can ask you, we were just having this discussion in the studio, the acquisitions, right? I mean, we all saw it, covered it at that point, which is the steel acquisition and then the auto acquisition, the peak of the boom in 2007-8. And of course, I mean, after that, markets came off, etc. But now we are, of course, able to look at all of that with hindsight. But that was really the first time the largest Indian group went out, right? And started this wave of outward acquisitions and M&A in that sense. So those were big, bold bets.
Yeah, Prashant. I think what is, the last street and Bombay House is a very short walk from each other. So we could observe quite closely what happened in Bombay House. And he was the first person, of course, we celebrate his philanthropy, celebrate his compassion, but he was also a great business leader. He was willing to put money on the table, take the group international because he thought it was important. And I think one of the unwritten stories has been the last few years of the bull market that has taken place in the Tata Group companies. You've seen Trent become a household name. You've seen Titan become a household name. You've seen Taj Hotels doing so well. I think the groundwork for that bull run was laid by late Ratan Tata in terms of delivering for shareholder value. There's also, just briefly, if I may say, that even during the darkest hours, the Tata stood by certain principles. For example, there was a big imbroglio that happened with Tata Finance in the 2000 when there was some management team that used shareholder money for speculating on the Lal Street. They lost some money. And the Tata stood behind the whole group and paid the entire liability off. There's never a question about it. And that's what resonates, and that's what creates this great brand in Indian history. And RIP to truly a great leader of India.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Mr. Gurcharan Das, finally, I wanted to ask you, is the message of the Tata Group in general and Mr. Ratan Tata's life in particular that you don't really have to work for profit or only and prioritize profit? Even then, you create wealth for a lot of people.
Yes, I mean, the fact that the Tata Enterprises has endured over 100 years. Now, how many Indian companies can talk about enduring over 100 years? That itself, the institutional continuity of a company. And then finally, despite the troubles with Mr. Mistry at the end, the reality is that they did the right thing. They brought in a professional. And Indian companies should learn from that it's not just families who should run. We don't want dynasties as we are having dynasties in our politics. We want the best person to run the company, whether he's the son or the nephew or a total professional. So professionalism is where the future of Indian business lies. And it's so nice to see that now we have a professional running the Tatas, and I think that's going to continue for another 100 years.
Well said, sir. Thank you so much for joining in and sharing your thoughts. You, as well as Mr. Damani, really appreciate it on this morning. What a man who could combine humility with such aggression and, of course, have integrity as the bedrock of it all. Sunil Singhania of Abacus Asset Management is also with us. Sunil, come in with your thoughts. We were discussing the kind of wealth that's been created. And come in on this, sometimes this disconnect. There's either search for profits, search for aggressive growth, or there is, doing the business the right way. I mean, the RBI highlighted this in a very different context yesterday after during the policy. Your thoughts on the legacy that Mr. Tata leaves behind?
I think it's a sad day for all of us in India, and particularly the corporate and the finance world. But I think if you can just summarize, I think Ratan Tata was a person whom my father respected, my generation adores, and I'm very sure the next generation also will look in awe. And there are very, very few people who would have that kind of a long legacy. The other thing is, it was not only about a particular sector, So Tata started with the brick and mortar sector, but see how well they have transformed. They have seen how India is transforming, and the group has also transformed. And that is where leadership comes very, very handy. You have technology, Tatas are there. You have retail, Tatas are there. You have every new sector, I think Tatas are there. And I think that is what is a hallmark of a forward-looking leader. The other thing is, Ratan Tata, I would say, was the one who gave confidence to Indian corporates to look beyond India and to think big. Acquisitions of $10, $20 billion, you need really, really guts to pull them off. And as you rightly said, I think profit comes if you are good and if you think long term. And I think that is what the whole ethos of Tata's has been. And I think a salute to him for continuing with that and laying the foundation where even after him, it would be impossible for anyone to deviate from that. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and I think hats off to what he has done.
Thank you very much, Sunil Singhania, for words that perhaps will echo from the heart of every shareholder, a person who is able to do the right thing, the conscience keeper of the country, of the corporate sector. Thank you very much, Sunil Singhania, for joining us. We also have the SBI chairman, Mr. Sethi, joining us now. Mr. Sethi, any personal encounters with Mr. Tata, or as a banker who must have perhaps lent to many of their companies, your thoughts?
You are right, Lata. I think it's a great loss to the nation, and definitely a great iconic leader who had shaped the philanthropic as well as industrial landscape of this country. And as you said, we share very deep relationship with SBI, and Tata Group share a deep relationship. And he has been, upheld the best practices of governance throughout his life. And the emulation of his corporate governance, I think, is the need of the hour for the whole corporate India. And as you mentioned, our relationship, the group relationship, goes back more than a century. And we've been part of Tata Group's journey. And I remember in one of our Bank Day celebrations, we requested Sri Ratan Tata to give a sound bite. He said, no, I want to record a video for SBI Group. We share a strong relationship with SBI Group. And he had sent a very poignant message to all our staff. And we fondly remember our association with them. And under him, it not only shaped the industrial landscape, has been a great contributor to the banking services. As you know, I think most of the core banking systems of the banking industry now today run by one of the Tata Group companies. I think it's a great loss to the nation. While we mourn his loss, I think we also honor his legacy and upheld the highest ethical standards what he has set.
Makes it easy for a banker to lend to a group with ethical principles, I would assume. Mr. Sethi, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
But Lata, this really brings it together, like all the people that we've spoken to and what Mr. Sethi said. Here's a man who was speaking to everyone with the same sense of poise, the same sense of calm, whether it is the largest bank of the country sending out a message or someone and he's meeting at the airport and happily obliging for a photograph. And I think that's something that really made him stand out in terms of stature.
No, I think absolutely. And I think that's
I think
why
the point that Deepak Parik was making, never raised his voice and the tone was same whether
no matter who was speaking.
Ultimately, it's what what you remember is the kind of human being that one was, right? So I think it goes back to that in that sense. Well, lots of tributes coming in and we'll continue to do that. But market open in a couple of seconds now. So the pre-open is on your screen in terms of what we've left off with. 85 points on the Nifty, 360, 365 points on the sensex. And we're running into open in a couple of seconds from now. So lots to track in terms of individual stocks. Yesterday, of course, things fizzled out. Can we hold on today? So the first rates are on your screen, 25,067.73. That's a Nifty with about 1/3% gain. The Bank Nifty is up about 1/3%, 51,150. The Sensex is up 1/3, 81,733. And you got the mid-cap index, which is up about 0.65%, 59,480 on the mid-cap index. The heat map will come up on your screen, and then we'll look at individual stocks in terms of how they're starting with. On your screen are some of the losers, and I can spot a Tata or two there. I think Lever, SBI, some of the others. It's overwhelmingly green though, so I think about 4 or 5 names are down in the red, at least at the word go, and everything else on the Nifty heat map is starting the day higher. Look at the advanced decline as well. 1,400 stocks, 1,450 stocks are up and about 250 stocks are lower. So broader markets, at least right at 9:15, are looking pretty good. Surabhi.
Okay, looking at some of the individual movers and shakers, the leaders include the likes of L&T, NTPC, Hindalco, BEL. These are the early gainers on the screen, about 1% apiece on each of these counters. Bharti Airtel, JSW Steel, of course, which has been cooling off last couple of sessions, moving up. So basically, the metals downtrade is reversing, and you've got two of the giants, Hindalco and JSW Steel, right on top. There's some buying in Power Grid, Coal India, BPCL. So the PSU space seems to be alive and kicking as well. On the downside, there's Tata Motors with about 1.5% cut, Adani Enterprises, Apollo Hospitals, Infosys, and actually some of the large cap heavyweights, HUL, Reliance, SBI, they're all piled up at the bottom, preventing a bigger move on the Nifty. Let's see if that changes. But as of now, a steady 80-point move on the Nifty.
Okay, all right. Well, let's keep an eye out on the broader markets as well. A few stocks are moving very, very well. Z Enterprises, that stock is up and about in today's trading session. So big move is what we're seeing out there. Z-Learn, it's only an 11 rupee stock. Yesterday it was up 10%. Massive volumes at upper circuit. So that one as well is up close to around 5% in today's trade. GMR Airports, I think there was a Jeffries note that came in earlier today. So that stock as well has opened up with a gain of around 2%. Top volume mover out there. Tata Chemicals, we had highlighted the stock earlier today. You know, the stock is up close to around 4%. It was up close to around 2%. It's in the F&O ban. It's seeing a big amount of delivery-based buying. That's one of the top performing stocks today, flying away as we speak. On the flip side, a few stocks that are pulling back a little bit. Torrent Power after yesterday's big move, that's cooling off a little bit. Avenue Supermarts as well cooling off a little bit. And you have Rain Industries. That stock is now up close to around 6%. So big move on that one. Oberoi Realty as well spiked up in the final hour of trade yesterday. Today it's building on to those gains, so up close to around 2%.
Well, Tata Chemicals with a 4.5% pop, by the way, is the biggest volume-led gainer up on your screen. So that's a 50 rupee move coming through, and 1151. I mean, you know, in relative senses, it has been a bit of an underperformer over the last 3 years. Has been around that 1,100 rupee mark for, I think, since 2022 or so. But there is volumes. I mean, 2 million shares. When the last time you saw those kind of volumes, right at the word go, but you got that this morning. Mazgaon Dock is coming up at the number 2 spot in terms of volume. So 4232 on Mazgaon Dock. So that's the other one. There is Dhani Services. Don't see this at all, but volumes are there. So we're putting this out. 5% on Dhani. JP Power is up about 3%, 23. Again, it's led by huge volumes. There is Zentech. Zentech is up 6%, 1867 on Zentech. Again, tremendous volumes. PNC Infra is up 5.5% and very large volumes. Garden Reach Shipbuilders is up about 3.5%. So yeah, I mean, there are a bit of some of these, at least 2 shipbuilders which are there, Mazgaon and GRSE so far. Shakti Pumps was up 5%, it's up another 3 today. So heading back to its recent highs again, 48.30 on that one. Vietech Vabag is coming up with about a 4% pop. So there is that as well. Market breadth still holding on easy with about 4:1, all in favor of advances at this point in time. Bajaj Housing Finance has had a 2-day 13-14% move. It's cooling it today. Just a 1% pullback. Adani Enterprises is down 1%. There's the QIP. Suzlon is down 1%. Had a big 8% surge yesterday. And, you know, RITES was another one of those large movers, down about 2%. So some of these are just sort of day-on-day small pullbacks that we are really seeing at this point.
You know, I'm looking at the biggest moves that are actually coming in from stocks that are in news. So the gain on Rain Industries is now 8%. I think they're looking at some global alliances on the graphite electrode side. PNC Infra and GR Infra, both of those are reacting to order wins. And it's a large one for PNC. The value is going over 2,000 crores. So that's one stock in focus as well. Aside of that, there's a very clear and distinct PSU play in the market. The shipbuilders are absolutely leading it. But a lot of other names like RCF, look at RCF, about 6% up on RCF right now. So in general, the PSU space is up and about. Some more names coming up on the screen now. NCC, for instance, is also managing about a 3% up move. So look at NTPC. I mean, it's actually the Nifty leader as we speak. Coal India is climbing higher. So it's turning out to be a big PSU morning as well. But I think before we, carry on with the market conversations, we have Rima joining in. She's looking at some of the standout brokerage reports of the morning. Rima, which one is it?
Well, I'm looking at JP Morgan on Vodafone Idea because after 4 years of being underweight on Vodafone Idea, JP Morgan today has upgraded it to a neutral with a target price of 10 rupees. The key thesis is that after the unfavorable AGR ruling in the Supreme Court, Vodafone Idea will have to take more tariff hikes. So the earlier expectation was that there will be 1 tariff hike in maybe 2 years. Now they're saying expect a 15% tariff hike in FY26 and FY27, which already follows a tariff hike that we had a couple of months back. Second assumption is out of their total AGR dues that the company, AGR and spectrum dues that the company owes to the government will convert close to about 29,000 crore into equity. And according to the SEBI formula, it should happen at a price of 10 rupees. So 10 rupees becomes a floor price in a way for Vodafone Idea. Currently, the stock has dipped below that, but they believe that that's not sustainable, and therefore they've gone and upgraded it, and their target price stands at 10 rupees. But it's a neutral rating because the company, JP Morgan says that the company is still in the early stages of proving its strategy, that they will be able to arrest subscriber losses, that their capex rollout is going to help. So they're saying that till we see the proof of this, strategy being successful, that's the time when they will turn constructive. As of now, it's a neutral rating with a target price of 10 rupees. Back to you.
All right, Rima. Thank you so much for that. But indeed, those are some pretty big assumptions they're working with, right? Because two of the big assumptions that report is making, one is that there will be some aggressive tariff hikes by Vodafone, and second is that the government is going to convert more of the dues into equity. Pretty big assumptions to make, considering that for tariff hikes, I guess the biggies, the giants have to move, right? I mean, unless there is something from Jio or Airtel. I mean, I don't know if Voda alone can push this through.
Absolutely. And, those are things we'll need to sort of keep an eye out on. The market, by the way, is still up about 60-odd points. TCS numbers, by the way, are today. And, of course, because of the demise of Mr. Tata, there was a press conference which was lined up. There were interviews which were lined up with the management, as always happens. I think those will not happen as we understand it. But Rima, tell us a quick bit, and of course, some of the changes there and the preview itself. What should we expect?
Well, for starters, as you pointed out, no press conference at 5:30 p.m. today and no interview tomorrow, which we typically do with the management. So that stands cancelled. As of now, the earnings release and even the analyst call, which is scheduled at 7 p.m., stands on track. Now, in terms of expectation, expect about a 2% dollar revenue growth. In constant currency terms, it should be a 1.2% revenue growth. The kicker in the revenue will come in from the BSNL deal. According to Kotak, it could add about $55 million. So that's on the top line. On margins, if you remember, Q1 was the wage hike quarter. Therefore, margins got depressed. Now, typically, in Q2, we see a pickup in margins, close to about 100 basis points. That always happens. But this time, that could be absent. So expect a pickup in improvement in margins, but the improvement could be about 20 basis points according to our poll. And the reason is that this BSNL contract, according to analysts, is coming in on lower margins. But, the range for even margins is very, very high this time around. So the street is a bit... it's hard to get a consensus there. What the company told us last time in an interview is that FY25 will be better than FY24, but it's too early to say if the growth momentum seen last quarter is sustainable. The aspirational margin range of 26 to 28% remains sustainable. What will you watch? Deal wins. Europe, I heard, is quite challenging, and that could depress, the company's financials and the industry per se in the current quarter. Early indications of, 2025 budget with the Fed rate cuts. Is that going to help? Can budgets pick up? Discretionary spend, and even the AI and Gen AI pipeline, the number which the company shares every quarter. Back to you.
All right, Rima, thank you very much for that. So that's TCS and what we should expect. We have Gautam Duggar, who's with us. He's a market master of the day, head of research at Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Gautam, good to have you with us here. Thank you very much for joining us. Gautam, I think I was looking at the earnings preview report for the season for Q2. For the full year FY25, I think you've brought down earnings expectations, EPS for Nifty, quite sharply. Correct me if I'm wrong, from about, 1320 to 1280 or so?
Yeah, hi, Prashant. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Yes, your conclusion is correct. We have brought down the estimates by 4%. So there has been a 4% earnings cut for both FY25 and roughly 3.5% for FY26. So we were at about 1115 and 1315. It stands revised to 1070 and about 1270. So essentially FY25 earnings now will be 7%, which will be the first year of a single-digit growth in last 5 years. So there is definitely a moderation out there. But, there is a nuance to it. If you look at the earnings cut of 4%.
Gautam, Gautam, you said single-digit, first time single-digit growth in?
5 years.
5 years. That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first time single-digit growth in 5 years. So what has happened, Prashant, is there has been a sharp cut in commodities. So for example, out of the 4% earnings cut that we have done in Nifty FY25, 80% of that 4% cut has come from 4 companies: Reliance, ONGC, Tata Steel, and JSW Steel. They account for 3.2% of that 4% cut. What it means is that the rest of the 46 companies put together have seen less than 1% earnings cut. More importantly, the broader coverage universe that we have, X of Nifty, which is about 225 stocks, they've seen less than 1.5% earnings cut. But the earnings cut look exaggerated because the 4 biggies in the Nifty have seen a slightly larger cut. So for example, Singapore GRM has been flat quarter to quarter. So Reliance has seen some cut in standalone, some cut in retail. And then you had a similar cut in Tata Steel and JSW Steel because the commodity prices for the quarter were a bit low. And at the same time, some of the expected recovery we were expecting in Tata Steel profitability in Europe, that got pushed out further. So yes, there is a cut. Yes, there is a moderation. But there is it's not a broad-based moderation. There are 3-4 companies which are driving large part of this cut.
Hi, morning. Just to go back, so you're saying 7% earnings growth in FY25, right?
Yeah.
that number really stands out because, I mean, last we spoke to several people on the street. I think the consensus was still in double digits. I mean, some people were still talking about 13% and then talking about possible downgrade. So you're already, below street in terms of the consensus, right? Because yes, I don't know, at these prices, at around, even at 25,500 on the Nifty, I don't know if this 7% number is already baked in. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Surbhi, look at it this way. We were at 1140 about 6 months back, right? So we had come down by 2% already in July. From there, we have come down by another 4%. Let me also hasten to add that this is the first year where we have seen the magnitude of cuts being slightly larger, right? Because post-COVID, we are not used to earnings cut. In fact, FY22 had seen an earnings upgrade. FY24 had also seen a marginal earnings upgrade. So we had seen about 15% growth in 21. Then that got uplifted to 40% because of commodity spike in FY22. In 23 again was a down year with about 12% growth. Then 24 again, we saw 25% growth. And this year we are at about 7%. So every alternate year we have seen some sort of a moderation in earnings. But quality of earnings is not getting deteriorated sharply, Surbhi, because the cut is coming from commodities. Do remember, when the earnings upgrade was led by commodities, market didn't give it too much of a credit. If you recall, FY22 Nifty earnings grew 37%. But X of commodities in FY22, the earnings were up only 21%. Right? So market didn't sharply re-rate in FY22. Similarly, I expect when the downgrade is led by commodities, I don't expect any disproportionate impact on Nifty per se. Yes, it does damage the headline numbers, but there is a lot of layers to that 7% growth.
All right. Gautam, so we've got that. The past quarter is going to be a little bit subdued, but you're saying that for FY26, we'll see high teens growth, which evens out things to some extent. What about your preference on sectors? Some of the financials, private financials in particular, valuation-wise, they're pretty well placed, and also they've not performed as much as, say, some of those PSUs. So what's your top picks in sector-wise?
Definitely, Nigel. So if you see our model portfolio, we have made one big change this time. We've actually reduced the number of stocks in our portfolio from 38 to 31 and tried to increase weightages or concentrate our exposure in sectors and stocks where conviction levels are high. So one of the big changes we've done is we've taken private banks from underweight to overweight. Right? We've been underweight on private banks for the last 2.5 years, primarily owing to the underweight stance on HDFC Bank. Now we have made private banks overweight, where we have increased weight on ICICI, HDFC Bank, and introduced Kotak Bank in the model portfolio after a very long time, right? So that's slightly bigger exposure there. Private bank becomes underweight. NBFC and diversified financials are also overweight, and also PSU banks are overweight. So all three segments of financials in our model portfolio are now overweight, and they are overweight with a chunky, 400, 500 bips overweight. So from 31% index weight, we are at 35% now. And secondly, on IT also, where we had turned overweight in July, this quarter we have further increased that overweight from 11 to 15%. So in 6 months, we have doubled our weight in IT from 8 to 11 in July and 11 to 15 in October now, right? So these are two big sectors where we have raised our overweight stance substantially. Between the two of them, as you can calculate, this is 50% of our model portfolio now, BFSI plus IT.
Okay. So just to speak of IT in little more detail, Gautam, we're starting the season now with TCS, and I think what Rima was telling us, the expectations from TCS are actually of a slightly more sluggish quarter. I think the street is putting higher hopes on Infosys this time around. How are you reading it? How are you reading it? How are you reading the trends? And I think there's some talk about while BFSI in the US is probably looking better, manufacturing in Europe, and we know, right? Auto sales, we know what's happening with the auto sector in Europe. That is possibly a concern. Your thoughts?
So, Surbhi, yes, Infosys will post, our expectation is 3% QOQ constant currency growth. So amongst the large cap, that's why our preference is towards HCL Tech and Infosys. If you see the composition of our model portfolio in IT, we have the highest overweight on HCL Tech for last 2 years running. And then we have Infosys in the large cap. And in mid cap, we continue to hold persistent and now have added Coforge. So as far as this quarter is concerned, we are definitely expecting some improvement in the commentary on IT sector. If discretionary demand were to revive, if not now, after another 3-4 months, I think Infosys will stand to be the biggest beneficiary. HCL Tech definitely has improved its free cash flow characteristics over the last 2 years, which is why we are giving it a slight premium to Infosys on valuations. Net, we think valuations on IT sector are at a stage where risk reward is very favorable. And as far as mid cap in IT is concerned, the growth continues to outperform large cap. If you look at last 10, 15 years of IT companies and compare the behavior of large and mid cap IT on earnings growth and valuations, you would see that every alternate 2-3 years, the mid cap IT used to go in premium and then fluctuate with discount to large cap. This time around, the premium of mid cap IT has lasted versus large cap IT for almost 4 years now. And one of the big drivers for that premium sustaining for so long is the continued outperformance on growth of mid-cap IT versus large-cap IT. As far as we are concerned, we've made it much bigger overweight now with both top-down as well as bottom-up perspective.
Okay. All right, Gautam, we will leave the conversation there for today. Thank you very much for joining, and we hope to keep getting you as the season progresses. Let's see how the earnings sort of finally play out and whether they can meet the lowered expectations that we're going with right now. Let's move on then. We have Baba Kalyani, Chairman and Managing Director of Bharat Forge, now joining in, as we have been getting many voices from India Inc. to celebrate and, of course, mourn the loss of one of the tallest leaders of India Inc., celebrate his legacy, but at the same time somber, because we, of course, will dearly and deeply miss him. Mr. Kalyani, thank you very much for joining in. Let's start by understanding your recollections, any meetings, any interactions, something that stands out in your memory when it comes to Mr. Tata.
First of all, let me just say one sentence that Ratan Tata really brought India together in terms of India's industry. He created a vision for India to move forward, and that's the respect he gained amongst the entire industry. As far as personally I'm concerned, I've known him for many years, even prior to 1991 when he took over as chairman of Tata Sons. And I've had the opportunity to meet him personally many times for advice on our business. And he always was very open, very frank, very genuine in terms of talking to me, in terms of giving us advice. I remember many instances when we have flown together. We went to Washington together on an Air India flight along with the Prime Minister's delegation for the 2006 nuclear talks. So I have had the fortune of spending a lot of time with him. I think India will miss him greatly. He was somebody who built a strong and positive brand for India. His greatest quality was his values, which put people first. And there are multiple actions which demonstrated this, but the most demonstrable action was during 26/11, and what he did and how the group took care of their employees of the Taj and their families. A great man. India will miss him. We will all miss him personally, but he has left a tremendous legacy for all of us.
I think those are visuals also, Mr. Kalyani. Hi, good morning. Those are visuals also coming in from the from Mr. Tata's residence, where I think there's a small ceremony being held. They will move to the NCPA, where his body will be kept all day today, as people will pour in to pay their respects. And I think that's what's happening with the visuals which are coming in. Our colleague Yash is there, and we'll go to him as well. Mr. Kalyani, when you're heading that large, I mean, the largest industrial group in the country, right? Big capital allocation decisions, I guess, would be something which occupy a fair amount of your time. As a business leader yourself, sir, how would you remember him in those respects? Because you have to make the big decisions, and he did, right? He did those sort of big acquisitions in the auto space and the steel space back in 2007-8.
This is where I used to go to him for advice. He was very clear in his thoughts. He always believed that Indian companies need to go global. He always believed that India has the capability to be a big industrial nation. And I think that was the direction at least he put me in. And yes, today we are going through some massive transformation in every business because the whole technology scenario has changed very dramatically. And technology change with the advent of artificial intelligence, digital technology, and everything else is a very different ball game today than what it is. So when you look at capital allocation today, you can at best figure out what you're going to do for the next 5 years. But we are very clear that we need to grow faster than what the nation is growing. So I think the opportunities in India are very great. There's a target that has already been set for us by the Honorable Prime Minister. And I think every group, and Tata Group is leading in all these fields, whether it's semiconductors, electronics, all the stuff they are doing. And we, in our own way, are doing what we are good at.
Good morning, Mr. Kalyani, and good to see you, Ben, as always. You briefly mentioned about interacting with Mr. Tata and also reaching out for advice at times. What stood out for me was ethics over profitability. And he marked India's ascendancy into the globe as well. Give us a couple of instances as well where you'd have reached out to him and, taken the next decision.
Well, it's very difficult to remember each instance, but I know a couple of years ago, I went to his house because those days he was not going to office very regularly. So I used to go to his house in South Bombay. And, whenever I requested for time, he would definitely give time. He would listen. He would give advice. Sometimes he would not agree with what I said, which was fine. I always treated him as an elder statesman of the industry, somebody whose advice was very, very useful for people like us. I've known Bombay House for the last 50 years. My father used to know J.R.D. Tata. I used to know Suman Mulgaonkar. That time, Mr. Ratan Tata was not part of the Tata Sons system. But, that whole culture there and the way the Tata culture is embodied, I think Ratan Tata just took it a couple of steps ahead. And, the nation will miss him. We will all miss him.
No, absolutely. Mr. Kalyani, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the somber day as we remember Mr. Tata. Appreciate you taking out the time and being with us here on the channel. Once again, I just want to point out to our viewers that those are visuals of the journey from Mr. Tata's residence to NCPA, and the body will be kept at NCPA for people to be able to pay their tributes, last respects all day there. All right, let's welcome in Madhu Khela now. He's founder of MK Ventures. Madhu, good to have you with us here. Thanks for your time. We've all kind of, since as long as I guess we've all tracked markets and looked at corporate groups, Mr. Tata has been right there, as a leading light of industry. How would you remember Mr. Tata and what kind of stood out for you over the years?
Hi, Prashant. First of all, deep condolences to the family. And I would say it's a big loss to the nation that we lost a leader like him today. Tata Group has been really like a visionary group in India. And they have not only stood for creating wealth, but making sure that they do it really with highest amount of ethical standards. They do it for the whole society, right? It is nothing personal about the group. And they are like equal to the brand India. And I don't know of any other industrial group which has dedicated themselves so much to the nation. And Ratan Tata led the group from the front. He took the India brand out of India. He made a global brand out of Tata Group in various countries, in various businesses.
And I think his life was exemplary, something which is very, very inspiring.
Yes, absolutely, Madhu. Hi. We're seeing visuals on our screen actually right now. Mr. Tata's mortal remains are going to be moved to the NCPA here in Mumbai. And then, of course, it's open for the public to pay respects, I think, 3:30 onwards. And he will be, of course, accorded a state funeral. There's a 1 day of state mourning as well that has been declared. We will probably see a lot of dignitaries attending. Mr. Amit Shah has already, I think, confirmed his presence. Business leaders have been pouring in at the hospital itself and breach candy through the night. And of course, the presence of the business world, of course, is going to be absolutely no surprise. But one imagines that perhaps there will be an outpouring of emotion, even for the common man, because Mr. Tata was one of the such tall leaders that the businesses that he built touched many, many, many millions and billions of Indian lives all around. So you can see there. I think the procession, the distance from his residence in Colaba to NCPA is not very large or not very big. But of course, it will probably take some time. And then, of course, the proceedings will continue over there. And of course, we are going to keep you updated and we'll keep bringing you up to speed. Madhu, just to go back to the legacy now, obviously the group has already put in place a succession plan. Each of the individual businesses are being managed by professional boards and professional management. What next, you think, in terms of a pivot for the group? As it, of course, remains deeply entrenched in the values that Mr. Ratan Tata leaves behind?
I think Mr. Chandra has done a phenomenal job of taking the legacy forward. And, what is most important is, we believe that there is so much corruption in India. But what Tata Group has been able to showcase, or just as an example, that even in a country like this, you can have the highest level of ethical standard, you can work for the entire society, and you can still be the largest group, you can still create the largest amount of wealth for stakeholders while making sure that you are very fair to the government, you're very fair to the society, you're very fair to the employees, you're very fair to people by and large. And what is most touching that, they have done it selflessly. Even Mr. Ratan Tata did it selflessly. To best of my understanding, the entire group's wealth is meant for society's goodness and for charitable purposes. So that is what will live like an example for many, many decades and maybe generations to come. And people will get a lot of inspiration from his life.
Hi, Madhu. Good morning. For me, I came from a home that was brought up on a Tata salary because my dad was at Tata's for 35 to 40 years old. So for me, that's, my connection with the Tata Group. But Madhu, what was your learnings? You've been a big investor. Now you're wearing the hat of an entrepreneur as well. And Mr. Tata, he fended off that Ford bid, when they tried to come ahead and put in a bid for Tata Motors. And years later, he went and took over JLR. In this entrepreneurial journey, what were the key learnings that you would have?
So, Nigel, more than the entrepreneurial journey, let me talk, what I feel from inside today. That, even in my life, I could walk a few steps. He ran the full marathon. If I walk a few steps, of the path which people like Ratan Tata have shown, I think I will feel more fulfilled going forward. And maybe we can do our bit for the society by and large, which somewhere we have started. But hopefully we get inspirations from people like Mr. Tata and really do it well. What the two things which stands out from a business perspective, he truly believed in his own conviction. So whenever you are convinced about an idea, like really Tata Group growing global, at the time when he took that bet of Tata Group growing global, no one in India was talking about it. He not only took one company, but he took several of Tata companies out of India and he established a brand. Obviously, there were, ups and downs in the journey, but he truly believed in his conviction. He truly believed in idea that India should be and Tata Group should be a well-known brand. And second, I would say are the ethical standards which they have set for doing business. So those are two things which really stands out for me.
Okay, just pointing out while we continue our coverage, just an eye on the screen as well. The Nifty is just about 30 points up from an opening gap of around 80-85 points. Now, again, the gains are dwindling, very gently so, but there is a bit of a cool-off. Mid-cap index is relatively better off, 0.5% up. The Bank Nifty is looking much better, but it is the Nifty that's cooling off. Let's just quickly look at the reasons behind it. If you look at the Nifty, well, some of the big names would be Infosys, ICICI Bank, Lever. Then there is Cipla and Trent. These are some of the names on the weaker side of the screen today.
Okay, Madhu, I know maybe today is not the day to go deep dive into markets, but with you. But since we have you, if I can sort of ask you a quick question on markets as well, you know, what's your sense? We had last week was a complete washout, right? Big selling from FIIs. What is your own sense? The low that we saw day before, is that going to hold? Will we revisit it in the near future? What's the trajectory from here as you see it?
Prashant, you are very good at it. So predicting the recent lows and whether it will break out or not. But what I would say that, you know, there are three things which market was worried about on the recent correction. One was the geopolitical situation, that this Israel war should not escalate beyond a point. Second was money shifting away from China. And third was some kind of a political uncertainty. If, you know, BJP were to lose all the states. So that last point has come as, I would say, the biggest shy of relief for the market, if I can put it like that. The Haryana election victory, in my opinion, is a big thing from a political stability perspective and from the continuing good work perspective. And I do not feel that the money shifting in China is going to be a long-term issue. If at all, if China really gets revived, the money will come into emerging markets. And if we get money into emerging markets, India will get a disproportionate share of the same money. So I'm not worried. Just to say, I think we are in a really good wicket, Prashant. As always, I remain optimistic about the long-term future of the country and long-term future of the stock market. You are seeing the way retail participation is increasing, and there is so much left out feeling, my friend. I can't tell you. I am sure in that even 500, 700 point decline, I don't know the exact number, but I'm being told mutual funds got thousands of crores on those 2 days by way of subscription from retail public. So till that time that is there, I don't think we are going to stop in a hurry or markets are going to correct significantly. Having said that, you know, we have had a massive rally in the last 3-4 years, and there are a lot of returns which have got accumulated. This is time to be stock specific. This is time to, you know, make doubly sure that you are on the right companies and the right sectors, and your homework is of top quality. And you are really putting money from a medium to long perspective and not thinking of 3-6 months.
Oh, absolutely, Madhu. That advice is well taken. So, you know, to come back to the Tata Group, let me ask you a question right there. So, of course, the businesses are firing and they're very different and distinct. But if I were to ask you that from now, say, for the next decade, if you were to bet on the key businesses that would perhaps be the biggest wealth creators of the group, of the conglomerate, which ones would they be? Which companies would you back?
So, I would say that Mr. Chandra's leadership has proven to be really exemplary. A lot of group companies have done really well. So, if I have to bet only on one company, it will be Tata Motors.
Tata Motors, which is actually going through a sort of interesting, restructuring on its own. There will soon be a demerger. So elaborate on that. Why Tata Motors versus the rest?
I would say, because the transition to EV and they being having the technological edge of being able to spend billions of dollars in last 3-4 years to establish that platform, and Land Rover and Jaguar being a global brand now, I think they have a really long runway ahead. I miss Rakesh Bhaiya and really miss his conviction on this company. What a bet he took.
Okay, no, absolutely, and that's another sort of legendary figure that we all miss here as far as Dalal Street is concerned. Madhu, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us with your views and, of course, with your tribute to Mr. Ratan Tata on this somber day.
May rest in peace and you have a good way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we're up 20 on the Nifty. We're just, already at least the first move has been a sell-off from the day's highest point. So look at that. 20 to 23 points is all that is left from the on the day. We'll take a quick commercial break here. There's more lined up on the other side as we continue to pay tribute to the business icon, Ratan Tata.
Welcome back. Well, let's document the journey of the Tata Groups, and Vinny's here to document the journey of Tata Motors under the leadership of Mr. Ratan Tata. Vinny?
Absolutely. It's been an interesting leadership over the years that we've seen. He took over charge of the Tata conglomerate group in 1991, and since then he's made a lot of changes and worked towards the betterment of most of the companies in the Tata group. Specifically today I'm going to talk about Tata Motors that he did. And interesting to see that, he actually was the original man who started Make in India, because he spearheaded the first designed and built in Indian car that was made in India. And this was the Indica, which was launched in 1998 from Tata Motors. Now, other than that, when you talk about JLR, the tie-up over there as well, Tata Motors British luxury auto sale brand JLR that they took over in 2008 from Ford Motors was one of the biggest, acquisitions that we could say of that time, making a lot of difference in terms of the growth story in India, especially in the auto sector. And not only that, his dream was to make cars affordable for the common Indian, that everyone could drive a car, and that dream of his was Tata Nano, which he spearheaded, conceptualized, and that is what he worked towards, the development of Tata Nano, which was a big move that came in. Let's not forget, also moving towards EV is what he focused on, and Tigger electric vehicle is what Tata even came out with later on. December 2012, yes, he retired as a chairman of the Tata Group. But till then, we've seen the growth in Tata Motors. In 1992, when you look at it, the revenue was just merely around 3,200 crores. And by the end of FY13, it was 51,400 crores. So a lot of changes, and spearheading and conceptualizing a lot in the auto sector is what he's worked towards over these years.
Okay, all right, Vinny, thank you very much indeed. What a legacy for Tata Motors. But then perhaps an equally big, if not bigger legacy at Tata Steel. And we've been discussing this, Nigel, with our guests as well. Really, getting the animal spirits fired up, so to speak, the aggression of corporate India coming to the surface.
Well, that's right. He put India on the global stage and he joined the Tata Steel Group, which at that point of time was known as Tata Iron and Steel Company. He had gone to the Jamshedpur facility for a training program. So his journey started in 1963. The most notable move that he made was in 2007 when he wanted to put India on the global stage. He won chorus for close to around $12 billion at that point of time. He took the risk, he'd had the appetite, he wanted to take the India steel industry global, and that's what he did. And it was a symbol of India's ascendancy in the global steel environment itself. He tripled Tata Steel's capacity. At that point of time, it was close to around 8 million tons. It went straight to around 28 million tons. And it was a bold move coming in from an Indian conglomerate. On Tata Steel Jamshedpur, he took over the chairmanship in 1993. And the plant capacity at the Jamshedpur unit was close to around 2 million tons. Today, the facility has a capacity of more than 10 million tons odd. He was also responsible for taking Tata Steel out of Jamshedpur. Earlier it was just in Jamshedpur. He went ahead, he had signed an MOU in Odisha in 2004. And now the Kalinganagar facility total capacity is 8 million tons odd. So he took, the Tata Steel brand to other parts of India as well. And human capital is something that we don't talk about very, very often. Society over profitability. Europe went through tough times, but he made sure that the employees were taken care of. Even in India, he took steel making to various interiors where it generated jobs and it became a source of livelihood for a lot of villagers as well. And finally, the focus on sustainability as well as innovation, various grades, various types of steels is what came about in his tenure as well. So he made bold moves. He, heightened the capacity out there, and he went ahead and he did that big acquisition of Chorus as well in 2007.
You said that the name was Tata Iron and Steel, right?
Yes.
I mean, the old-timers still, actually there are few left now. They still call it Tisco.
Yeah, Tisco.
Tata Steel is, actually when I started, it was always Tisco.
Yeah.
And of course...
so that's why, when I joined as well, 14 years ago, I think Surabhi knows what's coming. But when they do well, I said Tisco.
Tisco is doing the disco.
It's going to do the disco. And when they don't perform too well, I said this time they're skipping out the disco. So, for people like us who've been tracking it for 12, 14 years, it still comes to mind as Tisco. So Tata Steel is the listed name.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the other consumer businesses as well, right? Titan and Tata Consumer and, what they've sort of done under Ratan Tata. Mangalam is standing by with a summary of that. Mangalam, over to you.
Well, when we talk about, Tata's ascendancy into the global group, we usually talk about the big acquisitions of Jaguar, Land Rover and perhaps Chorus as well. All of this was started actually from the consumer space itself when they went ahead and bought the British tea company Tetley itself. But before that, Titan, which was earlier founded by Xerxes Desai and JRD Tata, when Ratan Tata took over the group, Titan was still largely a watch company. In fact, it was India's largest watch company. Ratan Tata was actually, responsible for ensuring that this business went beyond just watches, got into the jewelry space as well, and now watches just account for less than 10% of the overall revenue of Titan, and most of the valuation is derived by the jewelry business itself. And if you look at just the numbers, when he joined Titan, that time as well was not a small company, 155 crore revenue with 11 crore profits in FY92. That in all of, the next 20 years moved all the way up to 10,000 crores with profits jumping all the way up to 725 crores. And add to that, he also created a fair amount of Karigar parks, etc., to improve the working conditions of all those artisans in the jewelry industry. But you speak about the consumer business. Tata's had the Tata Tea. They had a lot of consumer-related agri products as well, but they were lagging Unilever until 2000 itself. But they acquired Tetley in 2000. At that time, that company was 3 times the size of Tata's business, and they paid about 271 million British pounds for that acquisition, and that was the first one that marked the group's ascendancy into the global stage, thereafter setting the stage up for all the other big acquisitions in the other categories that would follow.
Oh, absolutely. And, the disruption on the consumer side continues with so many Tata brands and Tata businesses, of course. And we've been speaking about Trent, I think, all through the last 1 year, which is the one that is really taking the legacy forward. Thanks for that, Mangalam. We do have to take a very quick break. Coming up on the other side, we'll get back to talking with Mitesh. Let's figure out how the market setup is looking like, considering we've sold off from the highs. Back with the specifics in just a bit. Welcome back. So back to the market, and like we've been saying, it's cooled off, but then it's bouncing again. So it's really all over the place. By the way, those visuals coming through, I think, yeah, the entire procession, the entourage is going to be reaching NCPA, and that's where the mortal remains of Mr. Tata will be kept for the public to pay their last respects. And I think 3:30, there is the memorial service there as well. So yeah, we will soon start seeing a lot of dignitaries troop in, from business leaders to politicians to, of course, noted public personalities and the public at large. Promises to be a very, very big day for the city of Mumbai, for the state of Maharashtra, and obviously for the country as well.
I think that's the first time we are seeing Mr. Tata after he passed in the casket. And I think the body is going to be placed in the NCPA gardens, where it will remain for the public at large, as we said, and of course everyone to be able to pay their respects. So I think that's coming in live right now as we speak.
But you do, Prashant, you do. Those are very, very moving images, and you do feel a sense of loss, and dare I say, a sense of personal loss. I mean, many of us don't have a personal connect, but he's a man who really built India and touched our lives in so many ways. All of us as consumers, some of us as perhaps as employees, as shareholders. He really touched one and all.
You know, Surya, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and somebody who's actually worked pretty closely with him, and he said that 15th of August, they had around the 15th of August, maybe on the 15th or the 16th, they had a Tata Trust board meeting, and Mr. Tata, and August is not very long back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just a few months back, he was sharp as ever. He was, taking interest in the minutest of details, and at that point, I mean, the person I spoke to said, well, it looked like, I mean, at least we all assumed that, we were planning ahead with him for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
So, of course, his condition worsened very quickly. In the last few days, he was in the hospital.
No, and that statement that came just a couple of days back, that actually gave a lot of hope. And, one would have wanted to believe that it was all under control, and that, he will, of course, be with us for much, much longer. Yeah. But unfortunately, that was not to be.
No, absolutely, and someone who's seen India for so long, the entire landscape changing, and of course someone who was right there when India opened up to the world. He took over, of course, in 1992. 91, of course, is when we opened up. Those reforms, those big reforms which happened, and Tata really led from the front in terms of looking at businesses overseas, getting foreign partners in. And of course, took it many steps higher with their big acquisitions, which they did back in 2007. So it's a long journey. It's a lifetime filled with so many important decisions, which have in many ways marked how the economy, how the business world in India has been shaped. So many industries actually, if you think about it, and the role that the Tata Group has played under Mr. Ratan Tata. Really remarkable.
Absolutely, and business with a heart, business with a conscience, and business for the greater good, not just for profits. These are not just words for a lot of perhaps businessmen out there. These would be just expressions, but Mr. Ratan Tata literally lived by these principles all his life, and he has passed them on to the next generation as well. And I think it's apart from all the achievements on the business front and the financial front, he will be so dearly missed for the human values that he stood for, which, as a lot of guests have told you throughout our conversations this morning, the values of humility, the values of integrity, and the value of working for the greater good for the community. The man imbibed them all. He lived by it.
And I think we have Mr. Noel Tata, there overseeing the arrangements right now. He's there, he's right there. You can see him on the left side of your screens. I think the cameras are of course behind where Mr. Tata is, so you can see. But he is there, and maybe we'll be able to show you that. He's there, and he's kind of overseeing all of the arrangements as Mr. Tata's body is put up there, and it'll remain there for the next many hours for people to be able to pay their respects. We've got, of course, our colleagues there, and our colleagues Yash, Shilpa, and Rachna are there. We'll try and get you reactions as people pour in, business leaders pour in, politicians, and so on and so forth. There you go. You can see Mr. Tata, there and overseeing. He was there at the house as well, the residence as well, early this morning with his family, with his children, and he's there now. So the Indian national flag, the body being wrapped around with that, and those are visuals which are coming in, and sad ones, but a life well lived and a life well remembered.
Absolutely. I mean, the legacy will live on. He's a legend, and he will stay very much alive in the hearts and minds of India, corporate India, boardrooms, and one can only hope that a lot of the teachings, the personal teachings, will sort of stay on with the business leaders and management heads, of course, as well. Of course, it is a day of mourning in Maharashtra. There will be no entertainment activities today. Flags will be flying at half-mast. State mourning obviously has been declared, and 3:30 onwards we're expecting the memorial service, and of course it's open to all to pay their last respects. A tall leader passes on, but leaves us so enriched in many ways beyond just the wealth that his businesses have created.
If I can read out Mr. Venu Srinivasan, the chairman emeritus at TVS Motor, so many tributes have been coming in from late last night when the news broke. And Mr. Srinivasan says, Mr. Tata was truly a remarkable business leader, the likes of whom nations can get only once in a century. His passion extended far beyond growing the Tata Group. It expanded to serving millions of people in India through philanthropic work, to which he devoted as much time and energy as he did to business. He was deeply grounded in values that placed the country before business interests, and his vision was truly transformational for a country and its people. So, it kind of neatly encapsulates, sentiments of so many people, and he was bigger than just merely being a business leader, heading for so many years the largest business group in the country. There you go. You can see Mr. Noel Tata now from the side of his face, as he is actively involved in arrangements at the NCPA grounds at this point in time. Yeah, there you go.
And the philanthropy aspect as well, Prashant. I mean, whether it was COVID, whether it was a response of the group immediately after 26/11, and a lot of that, would not even be announced in a big way. It would be revealed, very quietly on the sidelines later. But there was sort of no ceremony around the philanthropic efforts. Towards the later years, he had launched a pilot project to...
I think, Surbhi, we can see Mr. N. Chandrasekharan as well.
Yeah.
He was there. So that's, of course, Mr. Noel Tata paying his respects. But I think we just saw Mr. Chandrasekharan. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
now appearing in view, paying his last respects as well. There you go. That's Mr. Chandra. N. Chandrasekharan, current chairman at TCS, someone, of course, who headed TCS and who was picked by Mr. Ratan Tata to head the group, a few years ago. So the entire top Tata community, Tata group personnel, people, of course, who've been not just with the group, but with not just with the operating groups and operating subsidiaries, but people at the Tata Sons level, and of course Tata Trusts level as well. I think you can see a lot of faces there who are all gathered. And I think I can see Mr. Srinivasan is there, or lots of familiar faces, of course. Some with the group, some, of course, in the business fraternity, all gathering to pay their respects.
Absolutely. I think I saw Mr. Narendran as well at some point in the crowd. So yes, all the top group leaders from the group companies coming through. And we remember, the Tata's name becoming synonymous with trust across businesses, across enterprises, whether it is, brick and mortar businesses, whether it's services. Trust, building that sort of equity capital is something that doesn't come easy to a lot of businesses. And perhaps that pulled in directly from personal conduct, led by, the man right at the helm, right at the top, which is, of course, Mr. Ratan Tata. And perhaps that is why, just in stature, grace, I mean, he just grew from strength to strength, a very, very tall figure for India and, of course, for Indian business as well. By the way, today it's just coincidence, today we also have group company TCS's numbers, and if you're wondering, like a lot of us were in the night, the numbers will be released. But of course, the press conference has been sort of cut out. That will not be happening. There is an investor call. TCS will go forward with its earnings release and the investor call. But of course, the interviews will have to wait.
I mean, Surabhi, as you said, right, I mean, the philanthropic efforts through... I mean, Mr. Tata actually gave away much of his wealth through Tata Trusts. And the funding went to education, healthcare, rural development across the country, cancer care. I mean, the Tata Hospital here in Mumbai, reminds us every day of the efforts of the Tata Group in that regard. Clean water access, education in remote areas. I mean, I think there were very few areas where help was needed of the private sector, and the Tata was not there. I mean, I think Tata's very much behind the scenes, quietly doing the work, and they've been doing for a long, long time. Mr. Tata, of course, himself received countless accolades. So in 2008, the government gave him, awarded him the Padma Vibhushan, the country's second highest civilian honor. And of course, his global contributions earned him a knighthood in the UK, recognition from various governments worldwide, and so on and so forth. So, he was not just sort of a leader here, but recognized globally for his efforts, both on the business side and, of course, on the philanthropic side as well. Yeah, I was just reading up on his early years in terms of schooling and college as well. So he went to three very prestigious key institutions in India, which was Campion School, Cathedral, and John Connon. He was also at Bishop Cotton in Shimla. And some of his sort of early schoolmates included very notable figures. Of course, music maestro Zubin Mehta. There were the names like Ashok Birla and even Mr. Rahul Bajaj. So, yeah, these were legends in their own spheres. And, that was a different time, different era, different India. And from there, he steered the Tata Group, India Inc., and, of course, the country into a brand new era of ambition in the early 90s, and taking that a step forward in the 2000s with those big marquee acquisitions that sort of he inspired his group companies to do. And also, perhaps, if you talk to a lot of the different group CEOs, whether it's Titan, Tata Steel, or TCS under Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, they all sort of tell stories about how the brand value and ethos was super strong, and the core always had to be strong. But a fair amount of course, innovation and fair amount of sort of experimentation, perhaps, at the individual business level, and that kind of leeway also being given out, because each of these individual companies, of course, have gone on to become multi-billion-dollar enterprises, generating a lot of investor wealth in the process. You spoke about some of the. I think we've got more dignitaries there, business leaders there, sort of lining up to pay their respects, and we will stay with those visuals as we get you sort of some of this through the course of the day. So yeah, I mean, a great leader, and people, of course, sad, but also, of course, in a way, celebrating his life and what he's done for the country, and of course, learning from him. And that is also very much part of this somber day as we look at this. I think we have Mr. Rajiv Bajaj now joining us. If you can go across to him, he's Managing Director at Bajaj Auto. Mr. Bajaj, good morning. Good to have you with us here. Good morning. We'll be reading over those pictures as people sort of are there to pay their last respects. But Mr. Bajaj, how would you remember Mr. Tata, and what would you like to share with us?
Good morning, Prashant. Well, obviously, like everybody else, I feel extremely saddened. In my case, there is a little bit of a personal angle to it for two reasons. One, Mr. Tata and my father were classmates at the Cathedral School in Mumbai. And secondly, in my 35 years of work life, I have basically worked in just one company, Bajaj Auto, for 34 of those 35 years. But the whole year, I had the good fortune of spending at Tata Motors here in Pune So I was in that sense prepared for Bajaj Auto by Tata Motors.
Rajiv, that's a very interesting insight. And actually, talk to us more. We were just discussing this. I was just looking at Mr. Ratan Tata's early life, and that he shared the classroom space with the likes of your father. Any anecdotes, any memories from your early years? Seeing the two visionaries together, or perhaps if you could recall what your father spoke to you about when it came to the House of Tatas.
Well, I'll tell you a little story, Surbhi. I have met Mr. Tata, obviously, fleetingly many a times, but in depth once, I think about 15 years back, sometime in 2008, 2009. This is the time when Tatas were contemplating making the Nano, and I was thinking about our quadricycle, the Qute. And something just inspired me to go across and meet a potential competitor who was my father's age. I sought a meeting. I was granted one. I went to Tata House one evening at about 4 o'clock. And I must share with you what happened there. I waited for him in his office. And when he came to me, for the first 10 minutes, all he did was vent, actually. He told me one by one about 15 instances all through school when my father had bullied him on different occasions, and in the classroom, even in the bathroom, and I was just speechless. I didn't know what to do, and I have to this date carried a diary to schedule my day for every year. So I made a careful note of all that in my diary, and all my 35 diaries are with me in my office, so I'm sure I can still find my notings in this regard. So I wrote all this down, and when I came back, I sat in front of my father and I said to him, this is what Mr. Tata says about you. And my father said, oh, how my father was. He just waved his hand and he said, this is all rubbish or something to that effect. But I told him word for word, and the actual words Mr. Tata had used were the exact words that my father, that typical of my father. So I knew that Mr. Tata was 100% correct, and he was remembering this after 60 years. So that has always stayed with me. Other than that, two quick points. One, he then asked me about my work, and when he talked about the Nano, he said that the Tatas had actually benchmarked the Bajaj auto rickshaw, particularly its engine, when the project started. And I said to him, sir, let's do this together. And he said, yeah, I'm open to it. Let me talk to my people. I'll come back to you. That was one. And the second was, the silver tray that he brought out, the coffee, the slice of cake at 4 o'clock in the evening. And he was in between two board meetings. He walked me to the elevator, waited there till the doors shut. Now, if you put these three things together and connect these dots, whether it was the memories from childhood, whether it was the hospitality, or whether it was the openness to work together, I think it tells me one thing about the person. He was a very, very sensitive man, a man of extraordinary sensitivity. And I think the world needs more people like that who are sensitive to everything that happens around them.
Rajiv, one can really hope that people across spectrum are really listening to the anecdotes that you're sharing, and many others, including Mr. Parik. I think that fact about humility has really come through from all the messages and all the conversations that we've had. And one hopes that not just business leaders, I mean, whether it's millennials or Gen Z, entrepreneurs, everybody takes this message in and tries to imbibe it at least a little bit. Rajiv, in fact, talk to us more about the two very contrasting personalities. It's so good that you've taken this call. Because on one hand, and I remember the last time we had these emotions pour out, it was actually at the very unfortunate passing away of Mr. Rahul Bajaj. Two very contrasting personalities, one who's shy, sort of staying away from the limelight, not speaking much in public, and the other who really spoke his mind. And both of them have made such huge contribution to this country. So how do you see these contrasting personalities? And, personally, where do you place yourself? And what would your message be in terms of just personal conduct for entrepreneurs and business leaders?
Well, I guess, one of my favorite quotes, Survi, is that of the physicist Niels Bohr, who said, the opposite of a truth is another profound truth. And I think if we internalize that thought, we would realize that there is no need to always judge what is right, what is wrong, what is better, what is worse. We must simply accept that the world is full of polarities. And I think in that sense, as you observe, Mr. Tata and my father were in a way polar opposites. But let me also tell you, under Mr. Tata's very private and demure self, as I saw it, I also saw a very determined, steely personality. And I can tell you equally, under my father's outwardly, gregarious and outspoken self, there was a very soft and emotional side to him within that. And I think this is true of all of us. So I think if we bear in mind that we live in a world of polarities, there will be far greater tolerance in the world, and we need that as much as we need sensitivity.
No, that's so beautifully put. By the way, the visuals are still pouring in. You can see Mr. Noel Tata there, very much meeting people who are coming in. I saw some politicians there as well. Mr. Praful Patel was there, and some of the other NCP leaders, etc., also behind him. Rajiv, if I can, so let's just talk a little bit of business in that sense now. For someone to have run that and for such a long time, industrial group like the Tatas, I mean, I assume capital allocation across businesses perhaps is top of mind. And that is such an important function, is also such a heavy responsibility. But he did make big, bold bets, right? I mean, he went overseas in a really big way from India Inc. back in 2007-8 with his acquisitions in steel and, of course, autos as well. What are your thoughts in that regard, and any learnings in that sense? You did just now mention that he was determined in what he did, although he was, of course, polite and compassionate and all of that. But what would your learnings be in that sense?
Well, I'd make 2 points, I suppose, Prashant. On a specific note, I would say that there is no doubt that what Mr. Tata did with JLR and Tata Steel at that time inspired a lot of us. And it's no secret that, when we set off on our partnership, first with KTM and then with Triumph over the next years, after he had done what he did, that certainly served to kind of embolden, inspire us, give us confidence, that, we can also do it kind of thing. And, we can also be global brands and play on the world stage. So there is no doubt, I think, in my mind that that definitely inspired us, as I'm sure it did so many others. And then there is also, the general point I would make, that I would say for myself, that I'm a person, I believe, who is much more, let's say, adept with the depth than with width. And what I mean by that is that, I can do only one thing at a time, really. As I said in the beginning, I have spent 34 or 35 years at Bajaj Auto, just focused on one thing in some detail. But to handle multiple things equally adeptly is really beyond my capability, frankly. And some people, are good with scale, but they're not necessarily good with depth and excellence. I think what you see in Mr. Tata is a person, who was master of both excellence and scale. And he demonstrated that, as you said, across the spectrum of activities and across decades. So what better role model can there be for all of us going into the future than this example?
Rajiv, finally, just some thoughts on trust. And you were discussing this earlier, that the house of Tatas, became synonymous with trust. It didn't matter which Tata brand you were, looking at, or whether you were buying Tata Salt, or whether you were looking at, investing in the financial services business through them. So when you talk about trust, what is your read-through? I mean, how is it built? How can a business house preserve it and make it last in such a durable way?
Well, it's obviously built over a long time. It's built by action and not just by words. And, I would entirely endorse what you said, Surbhi, that, when you walk the talk repeatedly. I give you a very small example of when I was at Tata Motors, and we heard that Mr. Tata was visiting one day, and a proposal was placed before him that, like the Japanese would do, Tata Motors should have one common canteen where managers and workers would both eat, so as to build like a common culture. Now, I guess this is one of those things that builds trust in an organization. When he was taken around and this idea was proposed to him, I'm told Mr. Tata said, oh, that's a wonderful idea, to have everyone in the same place, eating the same food, etc., and build that brotherhood. But please do take care that you elevate the workers to the managers level and do not downgrade the managers to the workers level. So again, I would like to say trust is built on the sensitivity we talked about. Trust is built, on the tolerance we talked about. And trust is built on actually, again, in this example of looking at something in detail, having the awareness of mind to apply himself to something as small as a canteen facility and make sure that all of his people are well taken care of. I think this is how true leaders behave.
That's again such wonderful stories, Rajiv, and really inspiring to hear that. On a side note, my son used to go to a cathedral as well, so that's I'll tell him that's something he's got common with. And when he's still young, but we used to, and Bombay House is of course next door, Rajiv, right? I mean, to that school. And we used to, of course, I used to tell him to identify everything that you see Tata. I mean, a Tata car or, the other brands which are so synonymous all around us. So it's really a business ecosystem from which you can learn so much. And I think we all have in some ways, and we will continue to do so. Mr. Bajaj, thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you with us here with all those stories, anecdotes, and of course, what you learned from Mr. Tata himself. Thank you very much.
From all this coverage, and we've been, of course, continuously on it since 6 a.m. today, Prashant, I would say that personally, and for a man as tall as Mr. Tata, I mean, who would be a busier man than Mr. Tata, right? Running the kind of conglomerate that he was running. And yet, if we personally can imbibe even 1/10 of the human values that he lived by, I think that'd be an achievement for each and every one of us. Business aside, it's those personal human values that made him the man that he was and will always be remembered as. Well, we have to start winding up on this edition of Bazaar. And as we're doing that, just to let you know, the market is actually up 120 odd points right now. We're at the day's high. But the coverage is going to continue. It is going to be all about the passing away of this legend. We actually will leave you with a conversation that Lata had with Mr. Ajay Piramal, chairman at the Piramal Group. Take a look.
Welcome to It's the Economy. It's a very poignant story that the economy is dealing with today, the passing away of the iconic Mr. Ratan Tata. I have with me today someone who can tell us some very deep lessons that he may have learnt from the working of the Tata Sons board and Mr. Ratan Tata himself. I have with me Mr. Ajay Piramal, who was a member, non-executive board member of the Tata Sons board for a 3-year term, plus a 3-year term, and continues there 8 years now in the Tata Sons board. Mr. Piramal, thank you very much for sparing time for us in what's a poignant moment for Indian corporates. What was your initial reaction when you met him? Can you share some personal experience that you had in your 8 years in the board and association with Mr. Tata?
So my association with Mr. Tata goes beyond the 8 years that I was on the board. But what I found in Mr. Tata was really somebody who was very, very humble, very graceful, a person who was, I mean, you could never realize that he was the chairman of such a large group. Besides being the chairman of the largest group, he was an icon for industry right from the time I've, been growing up. But yet you would see his humility. He would insist on coming to my office or home, and I would feel actually very embarrassed with that. And I would say, I will come, but no. Okay. The way he treated people, whether it was a big politician, businessman, or whether it was an ordinary assistant in the office, it was the same. So, I mean, I have learned a lot from him.
That's a marvelous lesson. Mr. Piramal, later on, after you were maybe 6 years into your board membership, you took over DFHL. In a way, you can say that it is the same business as Tata Capital or, the lending industry. Did that ever come up?
No, I think that is the beauty of both the Tata Sons, the culture of the Tata Sons, and to some extent, I would say, even the values that we have learned from them. And we never felt that we were competing with each other. We never felt that, okay, there was some, and I have never heard, even that was the time when Mr. Chandra was the chairman, he has never ever once, kept away any information from me, though I've offered to do that. Though he will share the same information across all the board members.
Okay. Well, you were a board member also during the troubled times when there were problems with the Shapoorji Pallonji group. Any memories about the way in which things happened at that time? How Mr. Ratan Tata handled not just that, any difficult moment? What are the memories you can share?
I can share that, even before this, before the actual decision was taken to replace a chairman of Tata Sons with when Mr. Cyrus Mistry was to be replaced, I mean, the amount of thought and the amount of agitation that was going on in Mr. Tata's mind, and the number of meetings that we also had with each other and with his group of course, other advisors as to what was right for the group. I think that was a big learning. And you can see that, I mean, it was not that there was something personal that Mr. Tata had against Cyrus, but it was just the way, I mean, the group was going, and he was very worried about the future of the group. And therefore, it was a decision not based on an individual relationship, but more so what is in the best interest of the group and in the best interest of the country. And I saw that in Mr. Tata. This is a really tough decision. I mean, all of us, I mean, never should one have an, in one's lifetime to take such a big decision.
Go through such a traumatic or a tumultuous dilemma.
Frankly, during this period when such wild allegations were made against him by people who worked so closely with him, who he had brought up, that actually hurt him a lot. But yet I could see that how his strength of character was there. He stuck to his decision. He fought it out. He thought that and I guess you would remember that in the beginning, all the businessmen, the media felt that he had done the wrong thing. And there was a lot of actually PR done by the other side against the decision, against Mr. Tata, and a lot of things were said. But he kept quiet. Many people felt that he should go to the press, to the media, and tell them what the real thing is. He didn't keep that, but ultimately he got his satisfaction when the courts cleared him of everything. And in fact, at one time there was an NCLAT decision, which was the most strangest decision, but be as it may, the Supreme Court did restore things. So I could learn from that you have to fight it out. When you have right on your side, you have to go and fight it. And that's what I believe.
Yes, it was a quiet, dignified battle, no taking away from that. Mr. Piramal, as an industrialist as well, how would you look at the Tata Group? I mean, to be able to use every penny of their profit for philanthropy and yet make successful businesses. What kind of a lesson is that? You're normally taught that you work for profit, but here's a group that works for profit so that it can be plowed into philanthropy.
Profit can be a force of good. That's what it has taught me that. And if you look at it, when Mr. Tata took over the group in 1991, his market cap of the group was about 5,000-6,000 crores, if I'm not mistaken. And today, when you look at it, it is in like 35 lakh crores. So value has been created. But who is this value for? The value is for the community. The value is for the country, not only for the shareholders. And in every area, whenever there's a crisis, Tata's has come forward. And this is the example. People talk about the giving pledge today globally, but this was done by the Tata Group 100+ years ago. And this is, I think, it keeps Indian industry, in the top in the world. We can hold our head pride. We have pride in the way Tatas have done. We take pride as much as Indians as any Tata person.
Oh, absolutely. No two ways about that. Outwardly, it looked like he was a shy person or even a serious man. But people whom we have been speaking to this morning say that he was also a man with a sense of humor. Anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, he was clearly a sense of humor, but he was a shy person. Okay. He was a soft person. He would not go out much. But he was actually a very nice company. We shared a common love besides anything else on dogs. So we would talk about that as well. And, also Mr. Tata loved food as I do. So we would often probably eat more than what we should. And he was a very nice person, but very reserved and, very soft-spoken. I've never heard him raise his voice through the most, these were challenging times when this whole thing was going on. Yep. But I have never heard him raise his voice or, be extremely upset. I think he had a lot of equanimity in the way he dealt with things.
Oh, yes. We heard others also say that. Mr. Deepak Parik also said that he has never heard him raise his voice. Just a final point. The Tatas seem to have got into the right niche in all phases of our, of our economy. They were in steel and heavy vehicles when the country was, barely building its industry. When we got into IT, they were the biggest and the first name as TCS. Now the country has a lot more rich people and we have niche buyers. So it's, Titan or Indian Hotels or Trent, where discretionary spending finds its, is reflected. What is the lesson you draw from someone who has been able to be relevant for a very long time?
But, Lata, you also say that Tata's has always pioneered what is in the interest of the country. So look at what they are doing today, whether it is manufacturing iPhones in India. They were the first to do it. They are the ones who are now setting up, they are setting up chips. Yes. They are setting up of EVs, whether it's EV batteries. So everything they are in the forefront. They're willing to take risk because they believe that they have the capital today. They believe that the country needs it, and they believe that they can be successful as they have in everything else. So for them, and I know that, look at the way Air India was also taken. Yes. I think no other group would have the courage to take it. And I don't think anybody, no other group the government would have given it to. It's only because of the reputation that Tatas have of having a sound management, of an ethical management, and having turned around difficult challenges that this has happened.
Yeah, two of the largest assets the government has sold. They sold it to the Tatas. First, it was VSNL at the turn of the millennium, and now Air India. A final word, sir. I mean, a lot of you industrialists were there. There was you, there's Venu Srinivasan. A collection of great minds in the Tata Sons board meetings. Just give us a final message for Indian corporates, for, the Indian in general.
I think, first of all, let me say that I'm just a pygmy compared to what I learned from the Tata Group. I think what I have learned, most importantly, is that values in the long term create economic value. And business is a force of good. It can do good. And we have to leave behind. Look at Mr. Tata. After so many years, he left actually his chairmanship in 2012. Yet his legacy and yet the sort of legacy that he's left behind continues to inspire not only the group, but I think every industry. So I believe that if you do this and look at every big cause, wherever it is, Mr. Tata or the Tata Group is there. Okay. So these are the lessons, and even more. I can go on.
Will the removal of the icon pose any danger to the continuation of the Tata legacy, you think? I mean, completely professionalized the working of their companies. It always was that way. You don't see any problems for the group to continue the way it has been.
I think that is again a tribute to Mr. Tata, the way he's organized the group. The group has only flourished more, and he encouraged it. It's not that he was not involved. He would be involved in some of the important decisions. At the end of the day, he was the largest shareholder.
Yeah.
But he has empowered people. He has recruited the right talent. And I think under the leadership of the present chairman, Mr. Chandra, the group has only has continued to grow, and it will do so.
Okay, oh, absolutely. The market cap and the shareholder wealth it has created speaks for itself. Mr. Piramal, thank you very much for joining us. That's a great lesson. Ethical values will always create economic value, and the ability to use business as a force for good is what the Tata legacy is, and is the lesson that Mr. Ratan Tata has left behind. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and articulating those values for us.
Well, Mr. Piramal, paying tribute to the great man, Mr. Ratan Tata, and